the venue that we are in terms of declaring it to be the precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. And the declaration reads as thus: I, Honorable Bandile Masuku, Chairperson of the Community Safety Committee, hereby declares Premier Hotel OR Tambo as a precinct of Gauteng Provincial Legislature in terms of Rule 56 of the Standing Rules of Gauteng Legislature, read together with Section 1 and 2 and Section 28 of the Powers and Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act number 4 of 2004. The precinct of Parliament or Provincial Legislature are described as follows: is the area of land and every building or part of building under Parliament control, including the chambers in which the proceedings of the houses are conducted and the galleries and lobbies of the chambers, every part of the building in which the chambers are situated, and every forecourt, yard, garden, enclosure, and open space appurtenant thereto, committee rooms and other meeting places provided or used primarily for Parliament purposes, and every other building or part of the building provided or used in connection with the proceedings of Parliament, while so used for the duration of this meeting. This place will be the precinct of the Gauteng Legislature, and there's the standing rules of the legislature will apply and govern all the engagements of the day. I so declare. Members, distinguished stakeholders and guests, good morning to all of you once again, and thank you for being here with us today to have this important engagement. The Portfolio Committee on Community Safety convenes this stakeholder engagement at the moment of national agency. The declaration of gender-based violence and femicide as a national disaster by the President Cyril Ramaphosa confirms what communities, especially women and children, have long been experiencing, that GBVF is a crisis demanding immediate, accountable, and coordinated action. Today, engagements focuses on the implementation and the compliance of the Domestic Violence Act, particularly the obligation placed on the South African Police Service. The law is clear that SAPS has a duty to protect victims, to respond promptly and sensitively, and to ensure that survivors of the domestic violence are not further harmed by failures in the criminal justice system. Yet, despite this legislative framework, many victims continue to report poor responses, delays, and secondary victimization when seeking police assistance. This reality compels us as a legislature to ask these difficult questions. We have therefore invited a broad range of stakeholders to have an engagement on our focus intervention study, which guests include academic, civil society organizations, gender justice activists, whose expertise and lived experience are critical in helping us understand where the system is falling short and what must change. Let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen and honorable members, the protection of victims of domestic violence is non-negotiable. Compliance with the Domestic Violence Act is not optional. It is both legal obligation and a moral imperative, particularly in the context of GBVF being declared a national disaster. Through today's engagement, the committee seeks to strengthen oversight, improve accountability, and ensure SAPS fulfills its responsibility to protect the most vulnerable members of society. We look forward to a frank, constructive, and a solution-oriented discussion that will translate into real improvements on the grounds. And thank you so much, and feel free and be welcome to this meeting. As we proceed, we have beamed the agenda. I think everyone has seen it. And we will then move to acknowledge the guests that are here with us, and further welcome our honorable members of the committee, and a special welcome to the chairperson of the Committee on Social Development. We truly appreciate your presence and your support in this engagement, which is so important to all of us. And let me further acknowledge the Provincial Deputy Commissioner, Major General Kumalo. If I didn't see him, I've seen Brigadier Joseph is here, Brigadier Zulu is here. Welcome, and we continuously appreciate your presence and your transparency and your willingness to be accountable. We don't take it for granted. I don't think there are many committees that enjoy such a good relationship with the service that we hold accountable. And from Tshwane, Dr. Heinz Kutsie, MMC Community Safety, Brigadier Nkomo, as always. Brigadier Nkomo can sell ice to an Eskimo. You know, and I think, thank you so much for continuous also being present in our engagements. We don't take it for granted. From City of Joburg, I didn't see them. Okay. We're supposed to have Councillor Nonhlanhla Makhuba. Gun Free South Africa, welcome Dr. Maposa. Commission of Gender Equality, I've seen members. Here I'm given Khimodi Tswemere attending. Oh, okay. From VETS, Southern Center for Inequality Studies, Lisa Vetten, thank you. Thanks. And then from CSVR, Anna Moyo. From BOA, Ms. Fatima Shaikh. Sonke Gender Justice. Piwa Magwiren Zanga. KM Psychosocial, Mrs. Kifilwe Mojapelo. Thank you. IPIT, I don't have a name, and the board for patrollers, Mr. Masilela, not yet here. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and our honorable guests and honorable members. Thank you for making time. We don't take these discussions for granted. As I've said in the opening remarks, that gender-based violence and femicide has been declared a national disaster. So it requires us to work together in a well-coordinated way as partners in making sure that we are able to push back, you know, the scourge of gender-based violence. So we're just going to go straight into the program where I'm not sure who will do it, Brigadier Joseph. They will get a presentation from SAPS, and then we'll have a presentation from community safety, and we'll have a presentation from social development, and we'll then have a small break just to stretch and loosen up, and then we'll have respondents coming in to reflect on everything. We are hoping that this will be a swift program. It doesn't require a lot of issues side issues to engage on. So over to you, to the SAPS for the presentation. Punchy, impactful, brief, and make sure that we're able to understand what's happening. Thank you. Over to you, Brigadier.
Honourable Chairperson of the committee, all the honourable members, the HODs present, all the senior leaders from law enforcement, and all the members and leaders and academia from the different organizations that are present today, all protocol observed. I'm Brigadier Joseph. I'm the Provincial Head of Visible Policing in Gauteng. And within the visible policing component, GBV, domestic violence compliant, is also one of the portfolios that I oversee. Honourable Chairperson, we take it from your lead that this is a national disaster and understand it as such, and know that there is definitely a responsibility on each and every person in this house today to understand what our responsibilities are, and at the end of the day, ensure we have impact with all the actions that we take. Just a short overview of the presentation. It'll be the purpose, the background, the legislative framework, operational experiences in the practical implementation, challenges, constraint in respect of the domestic violence implementation, and then our recommendations. The purpose was outlined very well by the Honourable Chairperson, so we don't have to touch on that. We understand what this is about, that we understand our roles and responsibilities and deal with this as a threat to our province, the integrity of the state, and the individuals that live within the country. Combating domestic violence in Gauteng is driven by an integrated multi-sectorial approach, aligned with national and provincial priorities. The South African Police Service, the SAPS, implements prevention enforcement strategies through the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy, known as the ICVPS. Targeted Chanela operations, which is throughout the country, and then we have our own scope and concept in Gauteng, where at high contact crime stations and coordinated interventions under Workstream 5, which is labeled the GBVF workstream of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement. Progress is further strengthened through the monitoring of the Service Delivery Improvement Action Plan, the STIP, to ensure accountability and to improve service delivery. The Specialized Family Violence and Child Protection and Sexual Offences, FCS, investigation unit plays a central role in combating domestic violence. Guided by its mandate, the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, the SAPS National Instruction 2 of 2019, the FCS focuses on the effective investigation of domestic violence, sexual offences, and crimes against children. The unit applies victim-centered professional investigative practices while working closely with prosecutors, social workers, and healthcare professionals to minimize secondary victimization and to improve conviction rates. Overall combating of domestic violence in Gauteng is grounded in the legislative enforcement, specialized investigation, intergovernmental coordination, and survivor-focused service delivery, contributing to safe communities in line with the National Development Plan Vision 2030. We'll just touch briefly on the legislative framework. I believe everybody that's here also understands it. The one which is the most important one for us is the Domestic Violence Act itself, Act 116 of 1998, as amended by the Domestic Violence Act 14 of 2021. It provides a legal framework to protect victims of domestic violence in South Africa. It defines domestic violence broadly and offers remedies such as protection orders, while allowing police to arrest without a warrant in certain situations, particularly where violence breach of protection orders occurs. The Act places clear responsibility on the South African Police Services, that's us, law enforcement, frontline service. Police must respond promptly and professionally to complaints, ensure victim safety, inform victims of their rights, include laying criminal charges and applying for protection orders, assist with medical care or shelters, and accurately document all incidents. SAPS must also enforce protection orders, execute warrants, and seize weapons where required. Organizationally, the SAPS must maintain proper records, ensure trained personnel provide victim-friendly facilities, and comply with the Internal Directives National Instruction 7 of 1999. Failure to comply constitutes misconduct and may lead to disciplinary action and at the end of the day could also lead to immediate dismissal. Effective implementation depends on accountability, training, and adequate resources within the SAPS. Our experiences. The following coordinating structures are in place to ensure that integrated response to domestic violence, DV, and gender-based violence, GBV. The quarterly SAPS GBV forum, chaired by the Deputy Provincial Commissioner for Policing and co-chaired by the Deputy Provincial Commissioner for Crime Investigation, includes all operational components such as visible policing, FCS, district GBV coordinators to strengthen internal coordination and oversight, and then that one also then reports directly to the National Forum, chaired by the Divisional Commissioner for Visible Policing and Operation. The monthly GBV and Domestic Violence Compliance Forum, comprising of the SAPS, the Department of Community Safety, Civilian Secretariat for Police Services, Department of Social Development, the Department of Health, promotes interdepartmental collaboration and monitoring. This is where we monitor our actions and account for our actions, and then also get progress on members that have been charged, what they've been charged for, how we mitigate that from happening again, and it is normally chaired by the Provincial Secretariat. Monthly Workstream 5, part of the cooperation agreement from the SAPS, metropolitan and district municipalities, enhance coordinated implementation of GBV initiatives across Gauteng. That report is also then compiled, and feedback is given in the meetings, the workstream meetings, as well as in the open meeting. In addition, officials from the Office of the Provincial Coordinator of GBV and Domestic Violence, Visible Policing, conduct daily station inspections to monitor compliance with the Domestic Violence Act. Furthermore, quarterly STIP inspections are conducted at station level by district STIP coordinators to ensure service delivery standards and accountability is maintained. In alignment with Pillar 3 of the ICVPS, victim support, specific victim-centered measures are implemented at all stations in Gauteng. Victims of crime are referred to designated victim-friendly rooms where they receive debriefing, counseling, supportive assistance in a private and secure environment. All police stations in Gauteng province are equipped with fully functional victim-friendly facilities, and there is a minimum standard to that which is also then applied, as well as dedicated GBV desks, ensuring accessibility, sensitive and professional support to victims of gender-based violence and other serious crimes. All stations have functional members deployed in visible policing and detective services trained in at least one of the following programs: Victim Empowerment Program, First Responder to Sexual Offences Learning Program, Vulnerable Children Learning Program, and Basic Police Development Learning Program, which then covers all three of those at once. A network of accredited places of safety and emergency shelters, including emergency transitional and long-term accommodation, is available for victims of violence against women. Victims are referred to appropriate facilities within the respective policing precincts across the districts in Gauteng. If we continue with the operational experience, the Gauteng Provincial GBV Forum meets monthly and includes all the people. We've touched that one on the previous one. And this one, Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy, ICVPS, has also become part of that, and then the pillars that are within that are also then covered. As mentioned earlier, the Gauteng Provincial Office has appointed a Provincial GBV and Domestic Violence Coordinator. She's seated with us here today. It's Colonel Mpatlele from our office, who conducts regular station visits and inspections to ensure compliance with the Domestic Violence Act. Identified shortcomings and non-compliance issues are addressed through corrective measures, including in-service training. As part of the Operation Chanela and in alignment with the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy, awareness campaigns on gender-based violence, GBV, and domestic violence remain a priority. These initiatives aim to educate communities and empower women, children, and other vulnerable groups about the rights and the procedures for reporting GBV-related offences at any police station. Combating GBV. To support the achievement of the STIP strategic objectives, the SAPS has identified external service priorities and one internal service focus area: rapid and effective frontline response to report crimes or incidents, comprehensive police support to victims of crime, proactive crime prevention initiatives to promote safer communities, through investigation and proper documentation of case dockets, and strengthening government revitalization strategies and strategic initiatives. When it comes to this, there are portfolios of evidence that will give you the exact figures, and at any given time, those figures can be drawn to see how we are dealing with domestic violence itself, how huge the workload is, how many cases are still outstanding, how many have been given attention, and then also, for example, how many protection orders are still on hand, all of that. And that also goes through to the compliance forum where it's reported on. Through these initiatives, FCS, through their initiatives, educates communities on reporting procedures of domestic violence, sexual offences, and crimes against children, the rights and obligations of the victim and communities, the prevalence and nature of crime within identified hotspots, and available support mechanisms and legal remedies. In addition, FCS ensures referrals to relevant stakeholders, include social workers, shelters, healthcare services, NGOs, and other government departments to provide a holistic support to the victims. The integrated approach strengthens prevention, encourages reporting, and promotes coordinated service delivery. Our challenges: the critical shortage of human resources at police stations, limiting the capacity to respond effectively to incidents and provide victim support. The recruitment of entry-level promotions and lateral in line with the available vacant posts, receiving attention. The psychosocial victim support services provided through partnership with DST, NGO, NPOs, placement at police stations, victim-friendly rooms, and also partnerships with individual local community organizations. Insufficient training of operational members at station level, affecting the ability to implement legislation, policies, and victim-centered procedures. This is a national performance indicator on the police's annual operational plan, and continuous provisions of training, including in-service training, is taking place. There are specific courses that must be there, and there's a target set on it at which Gauteng at the moment is performing on target on 90% of the people that are there that are needed or within the environment are fully trained and have gone through these specific courses. Command and control issues, where operational compliance with GBV and DV legislation, policies, and strategy is not consistently enforced. Internal investigations are conducted and disciplinary measures implemented where necessary. So when it comes to this, if you are found non-compliant and you did not comply to the Domestic Violence Act, when you have been approached by a victim or you're investigating a specific docket and you are found guilty, then a dismissal would be looming, and that's what you could face. So, and it is taking place. We do have a stat on that to say how many people have been charged, and then obviously what the end result of that is. The following challenges are experienced in cases referred to the FCS unit: high withdrawal rate of cases, often due to victim intimidation, reconciliation, or dependency on the suspect; hostile or uncooperative witnesses, which negatively affects the strength in investigations and prosecution outcomes; relocation of witnesses, making it difficult to trace and secure their participation in court proceedings; court-mediated resolutions or case withdrawals, resulting in suspects being released; a high number of repeat offenders in domestic violence matters, indicating ongoing cycles of abuse and challenges in long-term prevention. These factors collectively impact successful investigation, prosecution, and conviction rates in the GBV and domestic violence cases. For their recommendations to ensure that effective implementation of the GBV strategy and domestic violence interventions, sustained coordination, oversight, and awareness of applicable legislation, all of this is taking place. Policies and strategies among other operational members in Gauteng are essentially being monitored through the following key structures supporting the implementation, and they include once again the quarterly SAPS GBV forum, monthly GBV and domestic violence forums, and monthly workstream 5 GBV meetings, and also obviously on all of our personal performance assessments. We also have an indicator where we are then evaluated on that as senior managers in Gauteng. Sustaining these forums ensures continuous monitoring, improvement, communication, and alignment with the national and provincial GBV priorities, continuous daily station inspections by the provincial coordinators. In addition, quarterly inspections of the service delivery improvement program also takes place, and increased engagement with other government departments such as the National Prosecuting Authority in respect of court-related processes, where we sit in the PEEC meeting with the NPA itself, and we also then explain what challenges we have, and we mitigate and come to some kind of a conclusion. This runs quarterly, however, the different work streams sit monthly. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. That is my submission.
Thank you. Can we move swiftly to the next presentation? Memme Sebanda. I hope honorable members will just capture note their questions and remarks whilst the presentations. We'll take all three of them and then we'll have a short session where we'll make remarks and questions. Thank you. Over to you.
Greetings to the Honorable Chairperson and all members, all HODs and senior managers from GPG departments, the SAPS and the entire leadership, as well as our colleagues and counterparts from the municipalities, all stakeholders and all academia and research organizations that are here. I nearly said, I greet you all in the mighty name of Jesus. I thought I was at church. I will be taking you through the work that we do as a department in assessing SAPS on how they implement the Domestic Violence Act. So that would be the overview, where we look at the report emanating from the assessment of DVA compliance in 11 randomly selected stations. These are the assessments that were done between the period of April 2025 to December, which is the 6 months period. We'll also look into the remedial action as well as recommendations that we give. As way of background, the Legislature Committee on Safety, the Portfolio Committee, is conducting a focused intervention study on the compliance to the Domestic Violence Act by SAPS. The objective of the study is to find solutions to minimize the scourge of domestic violence. The committee intends to conduct public meetings in all the regions to solicit public inputs on the effectiveness of services offered by both the department and SAPS on the subject matter. The interventions conducted by the department and SAPS are as follows. We have DVA compliance oversight. This is where, as a department, we undertake announced and unannounced monthly visits to the stations in order to check the implementation or compliance to the Domestic Violence Act, but we also have monthly compliance forums as indicated by Brigadier Joseph. We also, through our GBVF coordination unit, we do household visits. And let me indicate, Chair, that through these household visits, which are done by our GBV ambassadors, we are able to get families that continue to report. You might find they did not report immediately, but as we do these door-to-door visits, we get a number of cases invoked and activated. We also do court picketing, where we support the victims as they go for court cases. We do referrals to NGOs, as well as provide psychosocial support to victims of GBVF. Now, findings emanating from DVA compliance in 11 police stations, we can report the methodology that we used includes convening monthly domestic violence meetings, and I think those have been extensively covered even in the SAPS presentation. The Provincial Secretariat convenes monthly meetings, and these meetings serve as a platform for reviewing compliance, sharing updates, and discussing challenges. This is where we also assist the provincial leadership to assist stations where we find there are gaps. Station visits and interviews, I've spoken to that, data gathering using the National DVA Census Monitoring Tool. This is a tool that was designed through our National Civilian Secretariat for Police Service. It's a qualitative data was collected using the approved tool. The tool facilitated systematic data capture on the AP info system, ensuring consistency and reliability in the information gathered from each stations. It's also, the method includes multi-level verification Data collected at station level underwent verification at both provincial and national level. This two-tiered verification process helped to identify discrepancies, validate findings, and uphold the integrity of the assessment. And obviously, we then submit the reports after every 6 months to the National Civilian Secretariat for Police Service, and also we ensure that the final step ensures that the report met national standards and could be used as an authoritative reference for ongoing oversight and police development. Now, part of the findings, I'll just summarize the findings. In terms of overview and scope, we can report that the report assesses compliance with the DVA Act. I've already covered that part. A total of 111 police stations across the 5 corridors were assessed, focusing on oversight, capacity building, support services for victims of domestic violence. The key compliance result that we found is that none of the corridors had all stations declared as significantly compliant according to the Civilian Secretariat DV's assessment standard. I will indicate the scorecards below in terms of the ratings and scores that are used. So which then means you still find some significantly compliant, but you find others, or there it is below, you find others at partial compliance. Most stations achieved significant compliance, but several were only partial compliant, and one, which is Rabi Ridge SAPS in the Eastern Corridor, was insignificantly compliant, which is viewed as a very poor performance. 26 SAPS members were identified as perpetrators of domestic violence during the reporting period, with sergeants and constables being the most affected ranks. Let me indicate, Chair, that some of these cases, they change. You find it was a domestic violence case, but because ultimately maybe the victim died in hospital, it changed the category. But we do have a few where the police officer somewhere they shot their partners and shot themselves in escape. Inspection and record keeping, most stations conduct both first and second level inspection, though frequency varies. Some stations do not keep records of members who fail to comply with DVA or national instructions. 102 stations out of 111 conduct first level inspections, and 9 do not conduct second level inspections. In terms of capacity building and training, this is what we gave as a recommendation, that officers, particularly your frontline officers, need to undergo training so that they understand and comply with the Act as they service our people as they go to stations. But we can report that 97% of the assessed stations had coordinators trained on DVA, but Krugersdorp and Sandringham stations were non-compliant in this regard. We made follow-ups. The officer that was assigned to go on training both the stations, you would find they were on leave when they were supposed to have gone for training. Wedela station lacked a DV coordinator at the time of assessment. In terms of support services for victims, we can report that the majority of our stations provide access to psychosocial support, shelters and health facilities, but 2 stations, which is Didier and Heidelberg, lacked access to social workers. All stations have established GBV desks, but 4 are not accessible to people with disabilities. All stations have private interviewing spaces and deploy female members in all shifts to support victims. In terms of reasonable accommodation of sign language and access, we can report that 44 of our stations do not have access to sign language interpreters, leading to communication barrier for hearing impaired victims. Various ad hoc interventions are used to address this gap. In terms of our victim-friendly rooms and volunteers, we can report that of the 111, 5 stations lack volunteers in the VFRs, which is a challenge for providing adequate support. Now here, Chair, I think it would be a detailed report. I'll just try and summarize of all the findings that I've given already. This is a graph that depicts, you can see that our lowest level within the SAPS rank, that is where we have prominence of perpetrators of domestic violence. I've spoken to the score. In terms of the northern corridor, during the period of reporting, only 28 stations were assessed for DVA compliance, and 89% of the stations recorded a significant compliance. Only Ekangala and Kalinen and Soshanguve have recorded a partial compliance, which is declared as performance below the mark of 55. More in Northern Corridor, I think that is just the same, just a list of more stations that were assessed. If we move to the Central Corridor, the corridor comprises of 42 police stations, and only 32 were visited in the first 6 months of this current financial year. It is important to note that only 30 of the visited police stations recorded a significant compliance rating, which then says only 2 stations in the Central Corridor are partially compliant. Only, and these are Boysons and Deep Kloof Police Station. When we move to the Southern Corridor, also termed in the SAPS language, this is Sidibeng Corridor. We have a total of 14 police stations in the corridor, and only 11 were part of the assessment. Out of the 11 police stations that were assessed, 10, which is 91%, recorded a significant compliance rating, and 12% partial compliance, which is Meyatin Police Station, recorded among those that are partially compliant. Eastern Corridor, which is Ekurhuleni District, comprises a total of 39 police stations, and for this project, we assessed 30 police stations. Out of the 30 police stations visited, 19 recorded significant compliance rating, and then we have 10 stations that have recorded partial compliance. Only Rabi Ridge recorded insignificant compliance rating. And the last corridor, which is Western Corridor, they have a total of 14 police stations, and we've assessed 11. And out of the 11 police stations assessed, 10% recorded a significant compliance rating, with only 1 station that has recorded partial compliance, which is Wedela SAPS. Training of DVA compliance, like I said, 97 stations that were visited complied, and where we have challenges, it's Krugersdorp and Sandringham. Furthermore, stated Wedela Police Station did not have a DVA coordinator at the time of the visit, and was in the process of appointing the new DVA coordinator. Station commanders' management of records for members who failed to comply. 12 assessed police stations do not keep records of the members who failed to comply with DVA or national instruction. Affected police stations in these regards are Brakpan, Brooklyn, Kalinen, Kempton Park, Ekangala, Bronkhorstspruit, Pretoria, Central, Didier, Lodium, Loate, Togoza, and Wonderboom Port. Inspection of DVA-related register. Police stations are expected to make use of these registers for DVA-related record keeping. Furthermore, these registers should be subjected to both first and second level inspection. Out of 111 assessed police stations, 102 police stations do conduct first level inspections. However, the Kalinen, Diepsloot, Douglasdale, Edenvale, Etwatwa, Kagiso, Rabi Ridge, Vosloorus, and Wedela police stations do not conduct first level inspections. A total of 8 police stations do not conduct second level inspections, and these are Boksburg, Brooklyn, Diepsloot, Ekangala, Germiston Hill, Brook, Kagiso, and Rabi Ridge. You'll see Diepsloot seems to be appearing in both the lists. Frequency of inspections, somewhere they must do daily, weekly, and also monthly. The analysis of gathering data indicates the following: inspections are conducted weekly, which is first and second inspections, followed daily first level inspection, which are conducted on daily basis. Availability of GBV desks, we are doing quite good. All our stations that were assessed have. Only one station is struggling, which is Bedfontein, and this is due also to infrastructure challenges. These facilities continue to assist tackling GBV matters at station level. Accessibility to GBV desks for people with disabilities. According to assessment, GBV desks are accessible to people with disabilities in 107 police stations. However, the following 8 police stations do not have GBV desks that are accessible to people with disabilities: Guatema, Lodiam, Binoni, Kempton Park, Katlehong North, Begesdal, Tembisa South, and Thokoza. Availability of private interviewing space for DV victims, and I think, Chair, this is one of the areas where we really feel it's an achievement in the GBVF space, because in the past, our victims were just interviewed openly in the CSC centers, but now at least we have these private interviewing spaces for our victims, and I think compliance, as you can see, it's 100% across the stations. We also insisted on availability of female members in all shifts, because at times our victims are not comfortable having to give a testimony of what happened in front of a male. So we are encouraging our stations to ensure there's a female on shift that can be able to assist. It was discovered then in all 11 assessed police stations, there are female members deployed in all shifts for this purpose. Status regarding access to psychosocial support: only 2 stations did not have access to social workers, which was the Deer and Heidelberg stations from Southern Corridor, both from Southern Corridor. Furthermore, all the 111 assessed police stations had access to shelters or places of safety, and also access to healthcare facilities. Availability of psychosocial support in a 24-hour basis. As it relates to access to support services on 24-hour basis, it was noted that 12 police stations indicated that social workers were not available on 24-hour basis. And these are, and I'm glad our colleagues from DSD are here so that they can then address that: Boysens, Bramley, Davidton, Dobsonville, Danota, Linesia, Meyatin, Orlando Springs, Tembisa, South Thokoza, and Vereeniging. Shelters or places of safety and healthcare facility are accessible on a 24-hour basis in all the access stations. I've already spoken to issues of sign language interpretation. We have 27 stations that had no sign language interpreters, and that the affected stations are listed. I think copies of the report colleagues have. The challenge with this situation is that hearing impaired GBV victims are then denied access to quality service because of communication barrier. Availability of volunteers, the assessment reflected on availability of volunteers in VFRs, and it was discovered that this was a challenge in 5 stations, and these are the Deer, Heidelberg, Meyatin, Rosebank, and Tarleton. In terms of remedial action, we are proposing that stations have developed intervention plans. So as we meet with them on month-to-month basis, we insist for station commanders to implement these intervention plans so that they can improve performance from partial compliance. Also, the department continues to monitor the implementation of intervention plans. So which means you will find that when our M&E officers have already done assess, they are also forced to go back where there were gaps to just check if there are improvements that have been done. The last slide, Chair, is recommendations, and we've given 4 or 5 recommendations. Measures should be put in place to ensure that the appointed DV coordinators in Krugersdorp and Sandringham Police Station receive the necessary training, and that was immediately. Ensure that GBV desk is established in Bedfontein, again immediately, and responsibilities for the first one is the Provincial Commissioner in DPC for Support Services, and then for Bedfontein is the District Commissioner, which is Major General Sitole, put measures in place to support police stations with respect to the provision of service to clients using sign language interpretation also immediately, and that is assigned to the DPC. Johannesburg District, Citibank District, and Western District must ensure that their victim-friendly rooms are established in Rosebank, Didier, Heidelberg, Meyerton, and Tarleton. And also that one is immediate. As we go and assess, we find that already some arrangements have been made to address these gaps. The provincial secretariat at corridor level should continue to monitor SAPS compliance with the DVA Act, and that is also immediately. And the responsibility there is corridor directors. What is key there is going back where we've already picked up gaps, because in this next 6 months, we will be going to those remaining stations, but they still then accommodate those stations to ensure that they are in line. Thank you, Chair. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you for a comprehensive report. Can we go to presentation from social development? Can we lower the, or switch off the aircon? I hope they can. It has become winter so quickly in the room. What's Tabin? Can we arrange for the? Okay, thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, councillors, the HODs that are here, the senior managers from the departments, and all stakeholders and partners. My name is Bandile Masuku. I'm from the Department of Social Development. I'm here representing our MEC, who unfortunately, because of other competing priorities, could not be here with us, and the HOD, so they are still engaged. Okay, this is the presentation from Social Development. This is just a table of content. I'm not going to go through it in the interest of time, and the purpose is just to present on the progress on the victim empowerment interventions that the department is currently embarking on in combating domestic violence. Just in the background, we're saying that gender-based violence has been declared as a national disaster, as you have already alluded, Chair. And as the Department of Social Development, we continue to intensify program to address this scarce. The Stat SA data show that rape and sexual violence have become a pandemic affecting all of us. And in response to this pandemic, there is a national strategic plan that has been developed for gender-based violence and femicide. We are all aware of this strategy, which is being implemented by all government departments. And this is a government and civil society multi-sectoral strategic framework to realize a South Africa free from gender-based violence and femicide. And it recognizes all violence against women across age, location, disability, sexual orientation, sexual and gender identity, nationality, and other diversities, as well as violence against children. So the NSP is premised on the equality of all gender groupings, including the LGBTQIA+ community, and affirms that accessing services is human rights based. So as social development, because we also contributing towards the implementation of this strategy, we are implementing pillar 2 and pillar 4, and the other pillars, because the strategy has got 6 pillars, we are contributing towards them, but we are primary actors for the pillar that talks to prevention and awareness, and the pillar that talks to, response, care and support and healing. So as we implement in terms of the gender-based violence services within the department, our core mandate is to provide measures to protect and assist victims of GBV and trafficking in persons, and also provide coordinated implementation of services, to victims of gender-based violence and trafficking. So the Trafficking Act is being administered by the Department of Justice, but we've got a critical role to play as social development in ensuring that, all the victims of trafficking, whether they are children or adults, they are taken care of and they are protected. We've got shelters that are also accredited, for victims of trafficking. So for children, all the children, that have been trafficked, they are, handled in terms of the provisions of the Children's Act, and they will be admitted in our child and youth care centers. So the services that the department is providing is prevention and awareness campaigns, including the 365 days of no violence against women and children, just to ensure that our communities are made aware, of the sketch, and also, we educate so that they don't, do gender-based violence. We've got shelters, shelter services for abused women. We've got shelters for men because men are also abused. And these shelters also, they admit women and men with their minor children. So we provide psychosocial support services to victims in victim-friendly rooms. At police stations, we have noted, Chief Makani, the victim-friendly rooms where you indicated that there is no 24/7 services. This is the work that we do in partnership with the non-profit organizations. We find them to provide these services in the VFRs. We provide psychosocial support services to victims in the Tutusela care centers, in hospitals, and also interventions to engage men in ending GBV. So we even have a strategy, that is talking to men, because we believe that men, are critical role players in assisting us to end the scourge of GBV. So care, response, support, and healing services to people that are affected by human trafficking, as I've already alluded to. Whenever there is an activation by SAPS, we are there on the ground. Our social workers will work closely with SAPS, to assess, before, those individuals are declared as victims of human trafficking. Like I said, we've got shelters that are accredited, because we cannot just take them to any shelter. There are shelters that have been accredited to admit these victims. And we've got men's program. We've got about 14 NPOs that we are funding that are providing specific services to, to men. In terms of the sheltering services, just to zoom into that, we're providing, in the main, is accommodation for women and men and their children, and there's food, they get food, there's therapeutic services, whilst there, because we believe that if they are because sheltering is a temporary, a placement, so we must ensure that at least they are restored. So we've got a documented, program that is being implemented. It's a restoration and healing program that focus on restoring their dignity so that they can be empowered and not go back to the, the abusive relationship. We also intentional in providing women with skills development programs, because some of them, we find that because they were dependent on males, so they find it difficult to be reunited, to go back to communities and, stand on their own, because of the fact that they lack a skill to can provide for themselves and their children. In the shelters, we've got recreational programs, life skills program, and they, assisted to access the legal services if there are court matters that are pending, and also social workers, assist them to prepare for, for the courts. And also they are accessing, primary healthcare services. These are just the targets that we are having as the department. I'm not going to go through them, but like I said, as the department, we are working very closely with non-profit organizations that we're funding, to provide these services. It's NPOs that are providing sheltering services, that are providing victim empowerment services, and the budget in all is about 163 million, for 162 million goes towards funding of non-profit organizations for the victim empowerment program. This is just about the effectiveness of current interventions. First one is about the increased awareness at schools, institutions of higher learning, the LGBTIQA plus community, the taxi industry, and the faith-based, sector. As the department, we became intentional in targeting these specific, groupings to, magnify our interventions. It's also effective collaboration within the rapid response task teams for effective referrals of cases. We've got social workers that are sitting in all the, the task teams, whether it's victim is trafficking in persons, to ensure that as and when victims are reported, we are on the ground to assist. Increased number of services at the VFRs and the Tutusela care centers at police stations and hospitals respectively, and repatriated and reunified the trafficking persons victims, with their families. During this financial year, we have repatriated about 103, victims with their families, either in the country or also outside the country. Funding for women in shelters to undergo further education and training and increase their opportunities for employment, and increasing the visibility of available services through NPOs that are funded, and also the intersectoral focus and targeted women economic empowerment interventions, for preferred procurement. In terms of the gaps and the interventions, I think as the department, it's very important that we indeed address the root cause, of gender-based violence. So like I said, we are, intensifying, the campaigns where we educate women about their rights, and the focus also on men, to address GBV. And the rights of victims to be upheld, the effective responses within the criminal justice system, and insufficient referrals of men accessing the intimate partner violence program. The intervention, there's the men that attended the behavior modification program so that they don't, reoffend, the financial dependence of the offender. And then that's where we're coming with skills development programs, and we are, strengthening that area of work to ensure that they don't go back to the abusive relationships. The strengthening of intergovernmental coordination, that's where we want to, strengthen the implementation, with the municipality through a ward-based, approach. In terms of reporting, this is just the National Gender-Based Violence Command Center. This is the number where, victims call, and then we've got social workers within the department, that are linked to this command center, and they intervene as and when they receive these calls. So this call center provides immediate care and support as well to the victims of GBV. These are just the recommendations that legislation is imperative so that, the sector can be regulated, to ensure that programs are accredited and shelters are registered. Currently, we've got what is called National Victim Services Bill. The National Department is currently busy with processes of taking that bill through the parliamentary processes. So as soon as the bill, is promulgated, it's going to assist us because it provides a framework on how services, for victims of gender-based violence should be provided, and also for accreditation of shelters, and all the work that we're doing as the department. So we're just looking forward for that legislation, to be promulgated as soon as possible. We continue with capacity building, more especially the professional staff, to ensure that they, they intervene in an effective and efficient, manner. So every now and then we've got the Training on Sexual Offences Act, the TIP Act, and also on Domestic Violence Act. Also capacity building on the main strategy, we've got that strategy and we continue to roll it out because men plays a critical role in preventing gender-based violence and also the research. And this is the pillar 6 of the national strategic, plan, because we must also just assess the impact of the work that we are doing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for an advice from the meeting if members or guests, they would want us to take a break now, or we can proceed with the respondents and then we have a break, then we have deliberations. Just a guidance, what members feel. Can we take respondents?
Yes, we can take the respondents that have already
Okay.
presented them.
All right. Can we take the respondents? Maybe let's start with Ms. Lisa Fenton.
Thank you very much. Oh, this is loud. And thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today on these various presentations. It's also to see, gosh, sorry, it's very annoying. It's also really nice to see joint oversight being practiced here. I think it helps ensure that we address domestic violence in a way that is holistic, that's not just a policing problem and not just a domestic, a social development problem. So I think what I'm going to comment on is really ways in which this could perhaps be strengthened and expanded to get you to a different way of thinking about and perhaps moving into new areas around how we strengthen what is being done to address domestic violence in the province. So my first comment is really based on the data based from Community of Safety and of Community Safety, which is obviously based on their mandate from the Domestic Violence Act. And it links a little bit with what the police were saying. I think one of the important things to do is to start moving away, is to maintain the emphasis on formal compliance. So by that I mean the things that you can count, like how many women are on shift, are there victim-friendly rooms, are the registers being kept. That's formal compliance, but it doesn't tell us about the quality really of the service. And I think obviously formal compliance helps get you some idea of what the quality of service might be. If a station is not maintaining its registers, that's telling you something about how seriously potentially they take domestic violence. But it would be good for them to start thinking about how do we assess the quality? What do people think of the service that they are getting from the police? So that would be one area to focus on. I can make some suggestions a little bit later. I think the other area to start thinking about is how do we stop looking at the Domestic Violence Act as the only act that the police have that addresses domestic violence that the police are responsible for. And one of the areas that would be good to see them start focusing on is the Firearms Control Act. Because the Domestic Violence Act has specific provisions around the removal of firearms, while the Firearms Control Act also refers back to the Domestic Violence Act. And the reason why I think it's important to emphasize this is just to bring to your attention a groundbreaking case that is going to take place probably sometime this year in KwaZulu-Natal. This case involved a police officer who failed to remove the firearm from an ex-boyfriend who subsequently shot Sashali Shah a month after she obtained a protection order against him. That particular officer is going to go on trial. She has been criminally charged with contempt of court because she ignored a court order to remove a firearm, and she's also being charged with culpable homicide. So this case will have very important implications for the way the police domestic violence. But I think what is important, and this is an area that possibly community safety should be looking at, and the police, is how many of application of protection orders are making references to firearms and to weapons. That is something that should be recorded. And part of the reason why there should be attention to firearms is in our most recent research around femicide as the most extreme form of domestic violence, we've found that guns have become the leading cause of women's deaths or their murders. And I think we must also bear in mind that Gauteng and Eastern Cape are the two provinces where we are seeing increases, significant increases in statistical terms in women's murders. It may be that that is related to firearms, because if you're seeing an increase in the use of firearms and an increase in women's deaths, it may be that those two are going together. So I think it's very important that as an area in which the community safety and the police can be doing is, A, looking at references to weapons, B, are those weapons being removed? It's very important that they start keeping a register of that, and if those weapons are actually being removed. So there are provisions in the Domestic Violence Act that allow the courts to ask for removal of weapons, and that should be checked. I think it should also be cross-referenced with the Firearms Control Act, which asks all your designated firearm officers at station level to be cross-referencing when somebody applies for a firearms license, if they have any reports of domestic violence against them, or if they have a protection order pending against them. And the other end of that, the other part of the Act they must also look at is that when somebody has been served with a protection order, that should automatically be going to the National Police Officer, to the National Police, the Firearms Control Registry, but it also requires the station commander to be making an order around the fitness of someone to have access to firearms. So I think it's very important that that component, the Firearms Control Act, the Domestic Violence Act, start being examined and investigated together as an important intervention that potentially will reduce the fear and threat in domestic violence that is not lethal, but may also play a role in reducing lethal domestic violence. So that's an area to be looked at. Another area to be looked at is whether or not the safety monitoring notices are in effect as yet in Gauteng. That was an innovation of the Domestic Violence Act. They were being piloted. I'd like to know if they're starting to be implemented in the province and what the experience is of their implementation. I think they are important. Would you like me to quickly just give you an overview of what a safety monitoring notice is? Sure. So it's also part of the Domestic Violence Protection Order. It's an additional part of the court order where the courts will instruct the police to regularly check up on particular women's safety, whether that is through WhatsApp, whether it is through going to their houses, but for women who are identified as high risk, to check that their safety monitoring is being applied on a regular basis. So it would be good to hear what progress has been made around that. I think it's a shame Honourable Swallow is not here. It would be very good to hear about what health is doing and how they are interfacing with the Domestic Violence Act, especially because the health sector often sees a lot of women who don't report and who don't, for whatever reasons, want to report, which I think is something that can be respected. But they are using health services as a point of intervention and a point of assistance. So it'd be very useful to hear how they are interfacing with the NGO sector in terms of ensuring women's safety. Then just a last comment, which I think is for DSD. I noticed that the police were saying that they have access to shelters. Our work in Gauteng has actually been very concerned around the loss of funding to shelters in the province. There should have been 21, but that number has dropped down to 13. And the reason most of them have ceased to be funded by the Department of Social Development is around municipal bylaw compliance. It's a pity Honourable Chokwe is not here, and we only have one MMC from Johannesburg, but I think the way in which municipal bylaws are being used to deny access to shelters, to use something like a cracked cupboard as a reason to close a shelter and deny women's safety is deeply concerning. Power can tell you more about that. But I think just to give you an impact on the impact of women of this overly energetic enforcement of municipal bylaw compliance is that in this year, when we had 21 shelters, at the start of this year, that number had gone down to 13 being funded by the department. And the number of women who were accommodating shelters in 2022-2023 was 2,413. And here I'm using the department's own statistics, their performance data. In 2024-25, that number had dropped to 1,290. So almost half. And that is purely through things like municipal bylaw compliance. I think if we look at Chapter 10 of the Constitution, which talks about the need for development-oriented administration, that's a very important role to step into and to talk about how we can ensure that those provisions in the Constitution are used to guide how social development supports shelters to reach their point of non-compliance. So I'll stop there. I know I only had 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it was a very insightful comment. I think it's quite useful. You know, I think it will help in terms of drafting and coming up with a proper way forward for oversight specifically, which is something that we are responsible for. Can we then move to the Center Study of Violence and Reconciliation? Ms. Anna Moyo.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I would like to stand on all protocols already observed. I would like to start by commending the Gauteng Provincial Legislature for really undertaking this task of monitoring compliance with the Domestic Violence Act. I would also like to provide some of our reflections as the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. We're an organization that provides multidisciplinary approaches to addressing violence, including gender-based violence in communities. And a lot of our interventions include working at a policy level, ensuring that we bridge the gap between policy and practice, and ensuring that policies and laws are implemented in ways that address the lived realities and experiences of those most affected by violence in particular. We also provide psychosocial support to victims of violence, including gender-based violence, ensuring again that there is healing and also that they come to terms with some of their traumatic experiences to be reintegrated back into society as citizens who are able to contribute meaningfully to society and to their communities and families. I will start here, Honorable Chairperson, by highlighting that I think just looking at some of the documents and hearing some of the presentations, there is still overemphasis on the Domestic Violence Act of 1998, whereas the 2021 amendment of the Domestic Violence Act actually expands some of the definitions, and it would be worthwhile to have the police also trained on some of the amendments and some of the expanded components of the provisions of the Domestic Violence Act in the Amendment Act of the Domestic Violence Act of 2021, particularly around the definition of domestic violence, which now includes, for instance, elder abuse, spiritual abuse, amongst other things, and also some of the behavior, such as coercive behavior, amongst others. I think this is where some of the gaps in the work that we undertake in communities, this is where we see some of the gaps, the overemphasis and reliance on the law that was, instead of the new laws that have been enacted in order to increase the protection of women in communities. We've undertaken a number of training sessions with some of the police in some of the communities that we work in, such as Orange Farm, Tembisa, Hammanskraal, Diepsloot, amongst others. And some of the big gaps really that we have come across is really the lack of awareness of the new provisions under the Domestic Violence Amendment Act and what this implies, particularly for the police in particular, and even in some of their monitoring visits, home visits, etc., what should be included and what that expansion should mean for the protection of women. We've undertaken some of these trainings in some of the communities where we've met some of these gaps, but I think really there should be a strategy around ensuring that the police are trained on some of these laws, particularly where there has been amendments that expand even the scope of policing and the responsibilities of the police around community safety. We also work mainly around the lived realities, particularly of victims and perpetrators, and we note that our communities are really sites of violence, particularly gender-based violence. As previously stated, gender-based violence in particular in South Africa has reached crisis proportions, but addressing it will really have to move beyond policing and the criminal justice system. And part of the solution is really ensuring that there is awareness raising, capacitation of community members around the very laws that have been put in place to protect them. In the work that we have done, particularly in Hammanskraal and Tembisa in the past year, we realized that a lot of community members are not aware of the criminal justice system, the processes that they need to follow to report crime. And there's a lot of mistrust between the police and community members in particular, where because of just the long-winded nature of the criminal justice system, they are seeing the system as not being effective. Sometimes when they see people being released on bail, particularly perpetrators, they see this as justice being denied, and they're seeing the criminal justice system as not being effective and letting perpetrators off the hook. So some of the capacitation and awareness raising workshops and dialogues that we've engaged with the police, the CPFs, and community members have really helped to bridge the trust gap between the police and community members and begin the sensitization that has actually seen a lot of community members working hand in hand with the police and also trusting the police and the criminal justice process itself in resolving and also adjudicating some of the cases in the community. In one community, for instance, in Hammanskraal, we saw the community members taking it upon themselves to hold themselves accountable for reporting issues of crime and issues of gender-based violence to the police, and also keeping an alternative perpetrator register to ensure that they keep this and also they monitor, and also they monitor compliance from the police side and also monitor basically the cases that are reported by community members in the community. We believe that addressing gender-based violence is not something that should be left perhaps to the police, the service providers such as the Department of Social Development, but community members as well, when they are engaged, when they are aware, and when they are capacitated, really become key role players in ensuring that there is accountability and also in ensuring that their communities become safe havens against gender-based violence and holding perpetrators accountable to some of the perpetration that happens, particularly in their communities. We are seeing community members becoming peace agents and peace changers basically in these communities once they are capacitated and they are aware of how the criminal justice system works, and also when they are aware again of what is available to them and what community safety really means and how they can engage the community policing forums, the police themselves, and other stakeholders within the criminal justice system to ensure safety, increase safety, but also increase particularly the gender-based violence prevention. Lastly, Honorable Chairperson, I would like to talk about prevention, and I would like to commend really the different departments that have presented, because we are not only addressing gender-based violence from a reactionary perspective, but there's also the prevention element, which is really something that we should strengthen and also focus on if we are really to turn the tide on gender-based violence, particularly in communities where it happens. So some of the home visits that have been spoken about earlier are really important, but really working with community members is really important as a preventative measure for against gender-based violence, but ensuring again that community members where this gender-based violence actually occurs in the very communities where it occurs, because community members are either perpetrators, bystanders, witnesses, or victims of gender-based violence. We really need them as key role players. We need their buy-in. We also need them to come to the table, holding themselves accountable to addressing gender-based violence. And again, some of the work that has been done will really increase the preventative component if community members are actually co-opted, looking particularly at communities being the very sites of this violence that we seek to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Valuable points made, which actually requires us to include some of the recommendations that you are making in terms of prevention, and also just a new look and relook of how community policing environment should look like. I think we're trying to look at how the future of that type of policing how it will take shape, particularly in the province that will encompass most of these common crimes that we see and also issues relating to gender-based violence. Thank you so much, Ms. Moy, for your presentation and response. Can then we get Ms. Fatima Sheikh?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. All protocols observed. I speak on behalf of the people opposing women abuse. And I must say that this is actually quite an important engagement, that we get to speak to people at a higher level, and that hopefully that the voices of the survivors are heard. For us, you know, I'm sad that the MEC isn't here, because she often takes things to heart, and after we have an interaction with her, we see good changes happening, but I'm hoping that the message gets conveyed. So for now, I'd like to just acknowledge that the victim empowerment framework is a step in the right direction, and that we are particularly pleased that it is very victim-centered and that it moves beyond the criminal justice portfolio, and that there are attempts made for the integration between the SAPS the Department of Social Development and NGOs. And we talk about a partnership, and I have something else to say about this partnership, but we continue. That there is the existence of victim-friendly rooms and referral pathways. And there's a commitment to ensuring psychosocial support for victims of gender-based violence. So all of this is really good, and it points in a positive direction. And I want to acknowledge the efforts made. Having said that, there's a lot of things that we need to point out on the path of survivors, and that there needs to also be a bit of a reality check. So for us, while these good things happen, there are implementation gaps, and survivors do not experience the victim empowerment programs as a program, but as a system. And that's what they face. They face systems, and often the systems do not work. And survivors, you know, have to navigate these systems depending on whether police officers believe them, whether transport exists for them to be transported from one point to the next, and whether they are able to access shelters that are often full, and also the concern about follow-up, which is very important. So the reality for us as NGOs is that referral pathways depends on individuals at the level of the police station, and we can't do this. We can't hope that one woman finds a really compassionate police officer that is going to take her matter seriously. This must be where she walks into a police station and everybody is willing to assist her. There's after-hour inconsistencies. Victim-friendly rooms are usually underused or poorly staffed, or just in very bad states. And I talk about this from a personal experience where I needed to take a relative to a victim-friendly room. And as a social worker, I was shocked because it was like a train station, broken blinds, dirt lying on the floor, and lots of people passing through this platform, which is supposed to be safe for women. And as a social worker, I myself could not advocate for the person that I was supporting through this. So I think we need to take a hard and fast look at how we actually spend our resources and what we mean by victim-friendly rooms. Information sharing between departments needs to be consistent, needs to be honest, needs to be frequent. Because these interdepartmental events is not just merely, you know, to kind of catch up and tick the boxes. It must be real engagement between departments. And then as an NGO struggling to keep the lights on, we need to acknowledge that the crisis is not just about services, but it is about sustainability, and that we need to really look at how funding is structured. We have volunteers that service the victim-friendly rooms. These are unemployed people that are there in the hope of finding work. We pay them a small stipend, but we expect the world from them. These are people that are not trained. They are there to do containment. They are there to fill out a form. But we expect them to be the people that hold these victims together until a social worker is available. And that is very unfair. We are exploiting people that are desperate for work, and we need to stop. As a human rights organization, we ourselves are guilty, but we need to really sit down and look at how we sustain these positions. In terms of integration, gaps between the SAPS and social development and NGOs, we need to be honest about whether the Domestic Violence Act actually serves the interest of victims. And we're talking about this where if the police fail to open a case properly, what then happens to her following that? Does she have access to victim empowerment services? Does the intervention happen immediately? Maybe there's a delay, she goes back. So the intervention is obviously delayed because it didn't start off well. Protection orders are often not enforced, and we fight this. We fight this on a continuous basis. And I'm lamenting now because, you know, it's not only today, it's an ongoing struggle. And then when victims are turned away, this is a lost opportunity because it takes a woman almost 7 times. She tries 7 times before she actually reaches out to somebody for assistance, for support. It's not something that's so easy. I'm abused, I'm going to go and get help. She stays in that relationship, and when she sees an opportunity, she will try. If she's turned away, it's an opportunity lost because she needs to build that courage to be able to go and seek help. And I think we need to understand her mindset. It's not that she enjoys being in this abusive relationship. She has very little resource to reach out to. And you know, she's eroded. As a human being, her self-esteem is eroded. And then to build up again and get the courage to try again takes a lot out of her. And I think we need to understand it from her perspective. And another issue which is deeply troubling, and nobody's really talked about this, is about the IPID report that was released on the 2023-24 findings. And we discovered that there's 97 police cases opened of sexual violence and assault by police officers themselves. So we can't blanket and blame every police officer and say that there's a problem with everyone. But I think we need to address the fact that the report is scathing. There's 35,000 cases that are not resolved over the past couple of years. And I think we need to look at how we choose people to be in those positions. These are people who are entrusted with the safety of your community. And if they themselves are perpetrators of sexual violence, some on duty, some off duty, then we need to look at how we actually select these people. How do we trust them to actually take the matter forward of gender-based violence? And there needs to be consequences because we don't know whether these people have been charged, whether they've been suspended, are they still on duty? And for us, that is deeply troubling, and we would like to see, as an NGO, and I speak for others as well, because we've had these conversations in different forums, that there needs to be some consequences to these kinds of matters, that we can't sweep it under the rug, that we know that police are part of our larger society, but if they are trusted with the safety of our community, then obviously they must be held to a different level. But also that social workers have to be vetted to be in these positions. So we want to know how you vet those people that are entrusted with the safety of the public. The other reality for NGOs are that we hope that the minister will consider the fact that funding is still unstable, that the demand increases and our shelters are being put under microscopes where, you know, if we have a cracked toilet seat, we are not compliant. If we don't have a piece of paper with a registration on that, which the Department of Social Development themselves have issued, then our shelter is closed. And these are not things that we can take lightly when there is such a dire need for these services. The expectation that NGOs have to fill the gaps and that we are partners, we take seriously. Because we report to the Department of Social Development daily, monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, and annually, because the department uses these statistics to report on whether they're meeting their targets. But if we're not funded sufficiently, we don't meet those targets, and our staff themselves then bear the brunt of a bad report. So we want this partnership to be real. There must be a certain level of trust and respect, but also an acknowledgement that we pick up the slack, and that there must be resources that are allocated. And the department says, we subsidize you. South Africa is a very unequal society. And international donors don't want to fund NGOs because we are considered a middle-income country. So when the department says, we subsidize you, the reality is that's the only money we have to continue with the services. So, where do we get the balance of those, of that funding to maintain these services? I think that we need to also, lastly, and I'm not going to belabor this, that we need to really sit down and look at whether the National Strategic Plan is the only way forward. That can this plan not be enhanced? Can there not be a lot more done to ensure that we reduce the incidences of gender-based violence in this country? Because at the moment, this is what we are known for, to be one of the highest, the country with one of the highest incidences of gender-based violence for a country at peace. So, we need to interrogate whether we can do better. And it's not just about the tick boxes, it's about the lives of women and children that we're hoping to save. So I thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you. I think you've raised critical points on funding, which I think is one of the issues that we'll need to take forward. We do have a general crisis as a country now that our fiscus is shrinking, and we also have increasing demands, socio-economic demands that government needs to meet, and it just also pushes us to think outside the box and how creative would be to make sure that we deal with these challenges. I think the gender-based violence challenge is a big one. And I think we will make comments when we come to the end, but I had noted the issue of the involvement of the police, which is the worrying factor, where police are actually part of the perpetrators of gender-based violence, whether when they are on, it's done in the police station, but also outside when they are off duty. Can we then move along to the next respondent, the Sonke Gender Justice, Ms. Tsanga. Ageko, okay. Can we then have Ms. Mujapelo from the Psychosocial Services? And thank you for making time to be part of us. Thanks. You can proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I am Kifilo Mujapelo, and I am from Kifilo Mujapelo Psychosocial Services. My purpose is to nurture relationships, build functional families, and promote psychosocial well-being. And to date, I have 16 plus experience as a social worker, and currently I'm completing my master's on social development and policy. And I love the fact that now we are talking about policy implementation from theory to practice. And what I've realized through assessing many policies through my academic journey, I realized that we are good as South Africa, and we know that we are good in policies, good policies, but the implementation now probably puts a different story, because we are faced with hard realities of gender-based violence and domestic violence in our families. Nonetheless, so I guess that's what we are here, from a multidisciplinary context to come with solutions. So with that said, I also do employee wellness for National Treasury nationally. And I get to analyze organizations from that level and pick it up as well in other organizations. So from that, however, also with my practical experience as a social worker in private practice, particularly within the West Rand and Ekurhuleni region, I realized that with the the SAPS or police staff members who are coming to my practice, what I realized is that there is somewhat a perception, and that's what I want to bring to the team today, to say there is separatedness of some sort where with regards to self versus the work that the people do. So I realized that the way a person looks at themselves and how they do their job tends to be a contributing factor, and these are the reasons. So I know, as we all know, culture eats strategy for lunch. So organizational structure and how people implement their mandate within SAPS. For example, the work that they do, the power that they have in a say, it's just I can say when you have to put power and arrest people and do that, the nature of their work tend to not conscientize them of who they are versus the police who's doing the work on duty. So I say this because we overlook personal elements or human elements of a person doing the job. And that's what I want to push, to say I'm personally an advocate for being conscious, being deliberate and intentional in our everyday endeavors, either as a mom or as an employee or employer. So to a large degree, I realized that with SAPS, EAP services are nice to have. And I realize also with my colleagues within SAPS who do the work, they don't have cases coming from the SAPS, the staff. Especially those who are in private practice, the staff doesn't trust them, and as a result, they sought services outside SAPS. However, what does that say then about those people who are doing the work? So I would like to maybe put a measure to say, to what degree do SAPS really look at capacitating their staff on matters that have to do with the self and conscientizing people of who they are before they can go carry out their duties as SAPS officials, because of this separatedness that I've just highlighted, number one. And so I feel like people are not so conscious. You go to work, you just carry on with the everyday. So it would be nice to have quarterly reviews or quarterly mandatory sessions where people have either coaches within SAPS that really, and not only SAPS rather, but to other organizations, to say, how do we conscientize people to be more conscious, deliberate, and intentional? Because we don't look at these personal elements. We have strategies, good strategies, so, and everything, but it's people who are going to carry out these strategies to the public and the grounds people. So to what degree do we make these services, and I know you can't force people to do EAP, but to what degree do we really push consciousness on this level so that when I do the work, I'm conscious, I know what I'm doing, I'm conscious of the macro impact of domestic violence, whether I'm in Bekesdal, Kaltenville, or wherever, across the region of Gauteng. To what degree am I conscientized to where am I going, what am I going to do? And to what degree, because I feel like it's contributing to the pandemic of domestic violence. And also that's why we're having people who are police officers or people who are entrusted with the law but not being able to carry out the duties, because maybe we tend to forget that we need people to do their job. Yes, the work is covered, but people, how conscientized are they? How mindful are they about this big mandate that they are carrying as individuals? So on the personal and human level and organizational structure level, that's what I'm realizing. Now I'm moving to what else? The gaps and within either DSD or community safety. And thank you to all the departments for the detailed statistics and how you presented. With the gaps, we know as the country that we have a high unemployment rate. And I know it's not necessarily your problem to say we must be now the one doing this, because you are looking at your own level, at the level that you can push the powers and to do this, implement and bring the changes. However, of course, in SONA last week, the president indicated that, if I heard correctly, but I think I heard him saying that we must have social workers in police station. So now it becomes social development and, all of the organizations here to say, how do we then cap the gap of having shortage of staff within SAPS and social development, while we have a number of social workers sitting at home. And I'm saying this because I also employ these people, but I can only give them so much. So what is DSD and SAPS, how are they gonna make or practicalize the president's will to have social workers placed in police station, because there's already shortage of staff. So, and I think that's a good strategy, having social workers. It could also speak to one of the speakers who spoke about 24-hour access of social workers within the police station, because I think we should also understand that DSD also have their own issues with having social workers who must now do the 24-hour call. So it means they must have people that they must employ who are only gonna work after hours. So this is perhaps the best strategy, to have these social workers within the police stations, so that we don't have to say there is no 24-hour access, because these are really hardcore issues that and realities that we are faced with as the country and as all these organizations. So roughly that is that. And the last one that I just want to bring is to say sustainability and employing the 4IR approach to all these policy mandates. To what degree are we also aligning to where the country is going with the fourth industrial revolution? Is it also not a way that it will also maybe employ other people to look at social platforms and the way that we can bring technology into the way we do service delivery as all these organizations? So that's also what I wanted to put on, so that because that is where the country is going, and that could probably be also the way we can access visibility can be promoted within the social settings and the use of technology as well. So roughly that's that, and thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we had a brilliant response to the presentation, and thank you for our guests who took time to even prepare notes to help us to think about this issue of the Compliance to Domestic Violence Act. And I think valuable points have been made, which I think will help us as a committee to make proper oversight, conduct proper oversight. But also, we don't want to just do oversight, just to be observers. We also want to play a role in making sure that some of the issues that are raised here are actually dealt with. I'm going to move to the next part of our program, which will be deliberations, and members of the committee will be given an opportunity to make their comments and deliberations based on all the presentations, the 3 presentations we got, and then the response. And I'm hoping that we'll then think about way forward. There are suggested recommendations already, which we need to look at and take forward. But I will allow the honorable members to make their comments. The issue of the worrying part, about police involvement or police being accused or alleged to have been involved in GBVF is one of the areas that we need to take serious cognizance on. And there is a general increase. I think part of it has been reported that we are one of the highest in the country, and there's a 75% increase actually generally around this issue of police being the perpetrators of gender-based violence. The issue of infrastructure has come in very sharply in many ways. I think even our own oversight visits to police station, whilst we're doing the FIS study, but also when we just do our general oversight, we've included, part of it is to include the victim-friendly rooms and the spaces or the gender-based desk spaces where victims are actually interviewed or taken care of in the police stations. And I think most of them, even if they are compliant, most of them are inadequate, and even in terms of the aesthetics of those rooms or spaces are quite telling and disturbing. And it's something that we need to look at, besides everything else. We do know that the general state of police stations, particularly the old ones and those police stations who started as satellite police stations, they are in Olivenhout, Babfontein, Beggersdal, the structure and the space in the police station is just inadequate and insufficient. And it's something that we need to take up and look into it. The issue of the funding of NPOs is a big issue. Like I've said when I started now, is that we do have a general crisis as a country, a challenge that our fiscus is shrinking. And even at the level of the international agencies in terms of NPO funding, I think it has shrunk drastically, over the past 2 years or a year with the changes that happened of government in the United States, but it also influenced other donor organizations internationally. The issue of the quality, compliance, ticking box, we do have. I think that we have done, but it's the quality of the service that needs to be also assessed now. How victims themselves who feel that they've been adequately serviced and helped in this regard. The issue of the Firearm Control Act, as a committee, we have taken up a posture around the issues of guns. I think the availability of guns generally is a big issue in terms of crime. And with gender-based violence, I think there's a majority of the crimes committed. Guns are actually weapons, and guns are actually utilized in this. And our drive, our awareness, and using our own spaces as the committee to drive this issue about the gun-free Gauteng, it's something that we are looking at. I've made comments about the issues of just expanding our community policing aspect. And maybe the question to community safety will be the issue about the functioning of Siabangena Brigade, and besides supporting in courts and picketing in courts, appearances of those who are perpetrators, what else in terms of community policing we need to sort out and make sure that it's effective. Let me allow members so that I don't belabor all the points. I think all the points are made. I'll start with Honorable San, Honorable Bosch. I think all of us will have a bite. The chair of the committee from social development, maybe do you want to start?
No, I won't like to start. I think I went through the presentation. I'm all right. I think we'll send our inputs and comments to you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Honorable San, can start.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, honorable members, HOD, our colleagues from SAPS, and also the stakeholder, the respondents. Chair, I want to first go to Brigadier Joseph's presentation. Brigadier, I'm sure that you still have a copy of the presentation, so I'll go page by page. At page 9, you provided feedback that there are monthly work streams under the cooperation agreement between SAPS and metropolitan and district municipalities. Can you please maybe give us back feedback, or even if the colleagues from the metros are here, can give us some progress report in terms of the implementation of the GBV initiatives? So that's the first issue on your presentation. The second one is on page 17. And I'm using this as a highlight for my observation at the Tsakani SAPS. the court-mediated resolution or case withdrawals. When I visited the Tsakani police station, we sat with the acting station commander, the chairperson of the CPF, and then they raised something that drew a lot of my interest. And I must say that that interest is negative. When I inquired about GBV violence in the area at the station, I was told that a lot of the cases reported happened over weekends, especially on Saturday and Sundays, and come Monday that the case is withdrawn. The reason for that is it often involves young couples, not necessarily romantic couples, but there would be some transaction in between. But when the one side does not want to pay, there's a GBV violence case being opened. As soon as money is exchanged, that case is withdrawn. Have you picked up those trends within the analysis, within your presentation? And I think just before I conclude on your presentation, Brigadier Joseph, is that we understand the public, and I think often we as public representatives put heavy emphasis and reliance on that. It's the police problem. Police must resolve GBV. But we must go back to understand that the police does not cause GBV. And of course, I say that with the exception where police officers are involved, as one of our respondents mentioned. I also see the challenges that you face as police officers. Can we maybe get your feedback in terms of, not just in terms of challenges, but how you would like to see private sector, social role players and actors be involved in assisting your work in fighting GBV. Thank you, Brig. That's your part. And then I move to presentation by Ms. Sibanda. I want to echo, and I think it was, if I please apologize up front, Ms. Sheikh, Fatima Sheikh. I want to echo what you said earlier on. I think the feel on the ground is very different. We've been to many police stations, and Ms. Sibanda, you presented your findings, which we do appreciate. We're not arguing about your findings, but what is very important is the actual feel on the ground. Now, you've conducted many inspections, I think weekly and even into different levels of the adequacy of these GBV desks and private interview spaces. Now, would it be in your view that these spaces are adequate? They are, I don't want to say comfortable, but fit for purpose, in that when a victim that just have gone through this terrible, horrific experience of being sexually assaulted, beaten up, and having to be chased from pillar to post, sometimes to go to a clinic or a hospital to go do some tests and come back to the police station only to be told to go somewhere else and wait. Do you feel that these facilities and desks at our police station is fit for purpose? And I can again share with you our personal experience that we went to a police station and we saw police officers working at the same boardroom. There are police officers interviewing a suspect, and there are women sitting in the corner waiting to be helped in the same room. And that was the facility. Yes, there is a facility. Yes, there is a desk, but it's not fit for purpose. I saw at a police station outside, and again, I'm not criticizing your presentation, I'm sharing the facts with you, that it's a shack, it's a corrugated iron shack that had some painting on the window, and that was the GBV violence room. Now, for any victim that's gone through that ordeal and having to go told to go inside and I'll interview you, I think we are we are creating a secondary damage to the victim. Chair, I think just in conclusion from my side, I understand our frustration being experienced by our private sector, our role players and respondents. But I also want to encourage at the same time that we need more of your participation. So I want to say thank you for your presence today and your valuable contribution and input. I think from my personal level, these discussions and engagements are extremely important because we do receive a lot of information that's going to help us in our work. But I think until that actual, ma'am, you used if I to quote you, the system. Victims should never be put through a system. They need to be treated as human beings, as somebody that suffered something horrendous. And that's what we need to change. A victim coming to a police station, being assisted immediately, offered the attention, and provided with whatever resources, be it from government, SAPS, or private sector, we need to be there and offer that. Instead of just saying, here's a piece of paper, log onto that website, go to that clinic, come back with that information. It's not a driver license renewal. This is somebody, this is a person we're talking about. So I want to stop there, Chair, and I hope that certainly after this round, that maybe at our next engagement, that we can hear more from the private sector as to see how they are able to contribute to fight this pandemic of our society. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Chair. I'm trying to figure out if I should really say something or anything.
Press, that's what we hear you.
Okay. Ms. Farik, Shaik, sorry?
Sheikh Fatima.
Okay, ma'am. And now, ma'am, is it Mujapila? Yes. Just on social work or social workers. My experience with social workers, especially those that are government employed, has been that I think they tick a box in some instances. They visit families, families that are in distress. It takes them forever, number one, to visit these families. If they do, they tick a box, they do whatever it is that but I think for them, our statistics were just they were not human beings, really, that they should really take our cases to heart and really do what. I know there is shortage of this, that, and the other. The system is not perfect. But unfortunately, you are in I don't want to say core business, really being a social worker is not core business, but you deal with human beings there. You are not counting bins or counting, or just marking pen that I was with 3 or 4 families for the month. I am done or I've reached my level. I'm speaking from experience. You get those people, they ask whatever they ask or talk to us as families, and from there, there's no one to follow up. Nobody comes to tell us as a family, are we good? Is the work in progress? Are we going to assist you? Or this is the door you should go to instead of, we need that guidance. We don't know much about social work, by the way. So we are very fortunate when a member at DCOC here says, no man, your problem, or rather your neighbor's problem, need a social worker. Otherwise, it's usually families gathering, thinking they have the skill, the capacity to solve a complex problem that needs yourselves. And you'll bear with me if this really is not necessarily relevant to you, but look, just on, when you spoke about social work, I thought I should just raise that for some of your colleagues, this is a by and by, and it hurts. It's very bad because you don't know where to trace that social worker, where you will get them. Who do you talk to? You don't necessarily want to go to the MEC and say, Memo Japili was here the other time, some 4 weeks back. They didn't come back to us. I can imagine there are many families in between that you must do that. I mean, you must give your attention. But there should be a way, I don't know what, really. And I hope this is just not a talk shop or something. But I hope I can get some advice, or we can get some advice to know how, what's the value chain? What happens there? We see a social worker and we think our problems are solved, but we're still stuck. We do not know, we're still where we were. We don't know where to find Mem Mujapilo, as an example, and all that. If maybe your authority is not necessarily government, you will pardon me, but I thought I should just say, Chair, it should be that advice given to social services, that they should do better. These are people's lives, especially those who are vulnerable, you know. That's where they are needed. Yes, they are not their mothers, but you become a mother, you assume that role when you're a social worker. That's what we look up to you, especially to play those kind of roles when there is no child-headed homes. They need social workers more than ever, you know, amongst many role players then, of course. But otherwise, Chair, I hope I was as brief as I promised
Okay.
to be. Thank you.
Member Kunene?
No, thank you, Chair. I guess, Brigadier, the SAPS will not have to be that liberal or that. On page 10, you are mentioning that you've got all police stations in Gauteng are fully equipped with fully functional victim-friendly facilities as dedicated GBV desks, while Community Safety says no, you don't have a GBV desk at Badfontein. So I've been to that police station, Brigadier. They do have a victim-friendly facility, but it's a very, but I guess the desk, it's something else. It's a very small police station. I think the chair's already spoken to it, so I would not want to further elaborate on it. Yeah, I was just saying that some of the reports get to be very, yeah, not entirely correct. And I guess this will apply to both SAPS and community safety or social development. There's Ikayele Temba in Everton. I visited that place, I don't know whether it's 2 weeks ago or so. That Ikayele Temba, I'm told by the employees that I found there that it's not accredited. So the only accredited Ikayele Temba is the one in Bramfontein. And that, so what it means practically for people who seek help there is that if they need to stay there, they're then referred to go and stay Ikayele Temba in Bramfontein. And then if they are with their children, those children have to be transported to school from Bramfontein to Everton. But then I was there, I was a bit disturbed. In fact, it's just that the woman who had reported the case, when I spoke to the social worker who was supposed to get permission for me to talk to her, because the report that I got from the social worker, from the person who works, they call it the mothers. The mother who I found there told me that a woman they took a woman to a victim to Everton police station, and the police refused to open a case. But you see, the reason that I could not take the matter further is because that social worker, I then asked her to give me the numbers of that woman so that I can follow up the case with Everton police station. she never came back to me, the social worker. I have her details, and maybe she didn't get permission from the woman to give me her number so that I could follow the matter up. But I was a bit disturbed that the social workers can take a victim to a police station, and then the police officers there tell her that no, this matter must be resolved at home, because that's advice that was given by the police officers. That's what I was told by the social worker, that the police officers suggested that they go and resolve this matter at home, which was problematic. And the center, unfortunately, there are social workers there are nurses there. There's one nurse, one social worker, who helped that woman, but unfortunately the help didn't go far enough, because first they could not open a case, and social worker, even when I tried to get her to, because I really wanted to follow it up, and I could not get that opportunity. But so it's something that I think it's quite sad that you still find police who want to refer women back to their abusers to go and solve the problems at home. But also, and I've raised this issue here in the portfolio committee, that you've got, I understand that all these shelters that exist, Tutuzela care centers, the victim-friendly centers, and the shelters that we understand that now there are 13 from the report that we got from Ms. Vettel. I take it that's the entire ecosystem that seeks to ensure that, because for Ikaela Temba to have been built in Everton, in Braamfontein, I take it that there was a need. So I don't know what happened that that center had to be downgraded to just being a transit area. Because now it's a very big building. There's many rooms there, but it's basically a transit area. You come there, they take you to a police station, they help you. If you need the service of a Ikaela Temba, you are then taken to Braamfontein. That whole building is wasted. It's many rooms there. And even at the back, the security was affected, and the people were able to get in and steal some equipment inside the center. It's a well built place here that I think needs to be revived. It needs to be functional. Whatever that needs to be done to accredit the center, let it be done, so that the center can serve our people in Everton. And I guess not only Everton, I guess the entire Val, or the entire Mfuleni area, Everton and Spooking, probably even up to Sharpeville and Bupilong, they can use that center. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to add on to what Member Kunena was talking about with regard to Ikaela Temba, especially the one there in Everton. I served on this committee for many years, together with Member Mulder here. And the idea was for us to have the same type of venue that we have and services that we have in Braamfontein across the 4 or 5 sectors of policing within the province. And I'm really saddened by the fact that, as you had indicated, this particular Ikaela Temba is not functional the way it should have been functioning, because that would have relieved a lot of pressure on the one here in Braamfontein. Indeed, this is a scourge, gender-based violence. And as a male, I feel disgusted, yes, but also ashamed. I don't want to give my history, because many of us, I'm going to assume here, just given the time, of course, that we're growing up, I must add to that. It was common practice for women to be abused. It has to stop. And a lot has been done, Brigadier. I'm glad with your presentation here. And I reflect over the years, but a lot still more needs to be done. And I just need to cotton on to what some of the responders had indicated with regard to, is it box ticking exercises or not? the meetings that you were talking about, and the integration is indeed good. But is it a box-ticking exercise or not? What are the outcomes? Are we still at an input stage? Are we at an output stage? Because after 20-odd years of being on this, I'd like to believe that there has to be, we would have moved over to the impact stage. And unless we are able to assess what impact we are having on society, we'd be remiss in our duties and responsibilities. But I'd like to just go over to the Department of Community Safety's presentation. One or two things that kind of bothers me here is Urabi Ridge in the Eastern Corridor was insignificantly compliant, which means that nothing's really happening there. And I then go to the recommendations, and it is not highlighted as a particular problem, because this is a major problem. And yet in the recommendations, it's just about provincial secretariat at corridor level should continue to monitor SAPS compliance. It is that type of thing. Is it just a box-ticking exercise? What remedial action has been taken right there? Has the station commander been addressed about not addressing this issue? Because we need to get to the root causes as to holding people accountable for the work that they should be doing. Where officers are not taking a statement from a victim is a reflection of the management of that station. An officer who is of a lower rank will only function in contravention of this act if they know that they can get away with it because the station commander is not doing the necessary. And the client services commander at that particular stage. So what has been done about Rabi Ridge to get it up to scratch? It's one thing about identifying it, the problem. What are we doing about correcting it? And then just with regard to, I've got some pages here. Do we have gender-based violence desks? That's just a box-ticking exercise. And I just need to cotton on to what one of the respondents spoke about. I think it's you, Ms. Sheikh, when you spoke about what does victim-friendly mean? And somebody, and it's member Soon, that spoke about secondary victimization. What does it mean? We have been to a very small police station that is very under-resourced. Olevenot Bosch police station, which is a very small station, and I commend the commander there because with all the challenges, they're doing excellent work. But I looked and I saw what that gender-based, or that desk was, the victim empowerment, the desk that was there. It was just a desk. Right there in that crowded police station, it was a desk. So now a victim must come in there and talk in front of everybody there, but they at least had a room that they could take them to later on. It is a very emotional thing when a woman who is very vulnerable and has been subjected to this abuse to go there, and as you had indicated, Ms. Sheikh, it has taken a lot of courage, 7 times being victimized, to go and seek help. And then you get to an environment that is just not conducive for that intimacy to take place. When I talk about intimacy, there has to be a connection with the police officer in the first instance where they go to report the case. So when you walk into a client services center, there should be a room, quite like not just a desk there in public, so that we can protect that vulnerable victim. So please, I think from my side, and yeah, we lawmakers, I can't just be looking to you at SAPS and saying, what are you doing about it? Because you did speak about the issue with regard to resources. What are we doing as society? What are we doing as leaders? What are we doing as politicians? And then I'll leave the firearm story because I was going to ask you, and I don't think you have the stats. How many of those who were involved with, and it is, a firearm is a really dangerous weapon, but how many of those cases actually were unlicensed firearms as compared to licensed firearms? I'm a licensed firearm owner. It's one of my sports, but I'm a responsible firearm owner. And you spoke about the Firearms Control Act. And we need to be able to distinguish between the two because our borders are porous. Just as drugs comes in here freely, so firearms comes in here freely, and therefore we need to be conscious about what we are talking about when we talk about firearms. Because I'd like my rights as a firearm owner also to be respected and protected. But we licensed firearm owners are remiss, believe you me, that as licensed firearm owners we come down on them. Because I belong to a number of associations. Chair, thank you. I've been covered by Member Soon in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, Honourable Deputy Speaker, members, everyone present, from the police and the departments. As Honourable Moody mentioned, I also served on this portfolio committee for 2 terms between 2004 and 14 before I was deployed to the National Assembly and now back again. The reason why I mention it is we've gone through this very same unfortunate topic then as well, 21 years ago. And I must tell you that nothing has changed except that it got worse, unfortunately. I'm not going to respond to any specific aspect in the presentations. The part that I want to say is that all the good people who are sitting right in front of me here are working with this situation every day. So they would know the best what's the situation, the circumstances that they have to work with, and I'm stand to be corrected for what I'm about to say. But I don't want to be negative only. On the lighter note, there is a saying that goes like this: in the end, everything will be all right. If it's not all right, it's not the end yet. So we've got no other choice than to continue and to pursue. But in saying that, we realize from what I see that we've got human resource shortages in police stations. It's been mentioned. I made some notes here. There's possible insufficient training, command and control failures, weak interdepartmental coordination. I'm glad that social development is here as well. The Department of Education should be here as well. Core causes of domestic violence, what is it? I think we're in agreement. Patriarchal norms, gender inequality, economic stress and unemployment. There's nothing that the police per se can do about that. You have to work with the consequences. Alcohol, drug abuse has been mentioned. Intergenerational trauma, what I mean by that is children that's been exposed to violence are more likely to perpetrate or continue with this kind of behavior. Firearm accessibility, Honourable Moody mentioned it. Yes, illegal firearms are available. We're sitting with the same situation with the tobacco industry, where a company over 100 years old have to close down now because the illegal trade has taken over and the government lose that tax. Yes, we should strengthen police capacity, of course. We all know what should happen. But I ask myself, why is not happening? There should be mandatory specialized training, trauma-informed training, protection order enforcement training, digital case management systems, regular refreshes, certification, etc., etc. We all know what should happen. Improve command and accountability. And the care centres should be expanded, and I can carry on. Prevention through education. I don't know what the situation is at schools at the moment. School-based gender equality programs engaging boys and men in behavior change initiatives, faith-based and community leadership mobilization. That's a very important one. Economic empowerment of women, of course, to strengthen protection orders, the tracking, the penalties, the immediate police notification systems, substance abuse intervention. One can only do that where there's capacity. What I want to do is, and I want to conclude with this, as I can go on and on. I've made some other notes as well. I believe, and I'm of opinion, that we need a social reset in South Africa, as a country as a whole. This challenge cannot be addressed by these two departments on its own. It's not possible. We need a reset would include a national value reorientation campaign focused on dignity and respect. If that doesn't happen, we're going to sit here next year and for the next 20 years with the same sort of outcomes. Compulsory school curriculum reform. If we can succeed to get the education department on board, then we're getting somewhere. Cross-party political commitment. Gender-based violence shouldn't be party politicized. Integrated community-based early warning systems. You need community involvement. Strong public messaging that violence is socially unacceptable. And unfortunately, the strategic truth is that it is socially tolerated in private spaces. I think we can all agree with that, unfortunately. And it's culturally rationalized in some instances. It is economically reinforced. It consistently punished. It's not consistently punished. And let me conclude, Honourable Chair, with the following. If we're not going to succeed to the power imbalance, trauma, economic stress, and social norms are addressed with this social reset, then the police department and social development will only manage the systems, symptoms of the situation. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. Member Ivan.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I must agree with everything that our honourable members said today, as well as our defined ladies over there. I don't know, do I say, or can I say, that I am privileged to live in a community where everything happens. Every single thing happens. I'm speaking of gun violence. I must agree with Honourable Mulder and Honourable Moody. Unlicensed firearms. We do not sleep there. You will find bodies riddled with bullets. Those are definitely not licensed firearms. And where does it go to? Gangsters. Sexual offenses. A 10-year-old girl was raped by her foster brother and another 65-year-old man. Her granny found out, lived in KZN. She came through with practically nothing to come and remove her grandchildren from that house. You know, I always get emotional when I speak of this. In December, this child received 2 awards from school. She attended school with broken shoes, but they were in foster care. Her hair was uncombed when I went to check out the award ceremony myself. My heart broke. I asked her, will she talk with me? And she didn't answer. Tears rolled down her face. And I said to her, leave it. I must say, social development, the department itself, I ask one question. I ask for help once, and it's provided. But yes, like you said, Fatima, the social workers does not come to the party. So in October 2024, the granny went and opened a case against these two. The foster brother was about 17, 18, and then the 65-year-old man. 1, no charges against the 65-year-old man. 2, not enough evidence, insufficient evidence for this 10-year-old girl whose future was just messed. On one occasion, her brother walks in, he's 13. He walks in on what is happening there, and the perpetrator says, "Shh, you can also come." And her 13-year-old brother also raped her regularly, on a regular basis. Goes to court, not enough evidence. Case was thrown out. I asked one of the major generals for assistance. He referred me to a brigadier. On the 20th of January, I asked the brigadier for help. Unfortunately, I became busy, but I didn't get any feedback. In November, a lady approached me. 3 children are neglected. 3 children are neglected. They are 11, 5, and 2. The mother goes out every weekend to go and have fun, and she leaves those children at home. I asked the department for assistance. In fact, I asked our MEC. The response was immediate. Phoned the social worker. Once again, the social worker told me she does not work over weekends. But the children were removed, which brings me to another point. In the south of Johannesburg, we do not have shelters. We don't have shelters. Those children were actually sent to a shelter on the West Rand. So if our social development department can assist with that, there's many cases, many cases. I had an 80-year-old lady who's homeless. I asked the department for assistance. Once again, immediate. When the social worker came, assessed the old lady, she didn't want to give me her details. Not that I would have phoned her. My best form of communication, and I'm sure everybody can agree with this, is sending WhatsApps and responding at night. Wouldn't kill anyone. The social worker refused to give me her details, so I could not do follow-ups. The old lady does not live too far from me, but being as busy as we are, we can't always go back to the people. She doesn't have WhatsApp, and she doesn't have airtime to call me and give me updates. So yes, it's actually a very, very sad situation, because I live these situations every single day. Every single day. As far as training is concerned, on page 16 of our report, the insufficient training. Is there any plans in place to get these things off the ground? I mean, really, it's heartbreaking that we are not manned enough. In the other report, on page 16, the availability of psychosocial support on a 24-hour basis. I can seriously attest to that at Boyson's police station. I can seriously attest to that. Those 3 children that were removed had to sleep on the floor at the police station. They actually slept on the floor until their granny fetched them the following morning. Very unfair towards our future leaders. And then as far as schools are concerned, yes, unlicensed firearms do meet the school children outside of school hours. We don't have enough visible policing around our schools. We just don't. Where gangsterism is rife, our children live in fear. Educating them would be one way of getting through to our children. But then societal problems, how are we going to handle that? How are we going to handle that? Because our children goes to school forcefully by their parents. Some parents put their foot down, others don't. But these children that are bullied are the soft, easy targets. They are the ones being given a gun, who are made gangsters, our soft targets. And once again, I'm going to end off by saying, I don't know if I'm privy to be living in a community where we see all these things happening that were discussed here today. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think, do you want to say something, Chair? Okay. I think we're coming closer to our end of the engagement, but I want to...
Chair, that will be only to request that I leave because I have to start my committee.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'm going to allow everyone who've made a presentation to make their closing remarks, responding to questions or concerns that have been raised by honorable members. And I think one thing that we might need to do is to try in the closing remarks to narrow a bit the issues that relate to the way forward. In the way forward, there will be different individuals or groupings that will have to take some action to support the work of the committee. And in my summary of all the things that have been said, I have 7 points that will actually constitute our way forward. I think one of them will be the issue of infrastructure. I think generally we do accept that there are spaces that are available for victim-friendly services and so on, but it's not sufficient and they are not adequate, and in terms of the look and feel of those spaces, also they are not good. The second aspect will be the issue of human resource, both in terms of the police officers who are well trained and fully trained to deal with handling of victims or survivors of domestic violence or GBVF. I think there's a big question about social workers or the social work services. We know that there's a very big shortage in numbers of the social workers. And we also have got a number of those who are unemployed. Chairperson of the Social Development Committee. There must be something that we have to craft to assist the Department of Social Development to be able to, I don't want to say formalize, but to adequately capacitate the social service department so that we can be able to cover all police stations, all hospitals and clinics, and all the communities' demands. And I think the 24-hour overtime issue is a big issue. I know about it. You know, when I worked in the hospital, you wouldn't get any help with social development or social workers over the weekend. And it means that you will keep the survivor in hospital only for them to be assessed on Monday by social workers. So there must be another discussion that we have with the department about the 24-hour availability of social workers. The issue of training of police is important in terms of sensitivity, how to handle victims and so on. But I think the issue of the welfare of police officers themselves can play a big role in making sure that themselves they can empathize with victims and actually survivors. For sometimes issue of being overworked, maybe underpaid and so on, you know, might contribute for them becoming so much cold. I don't want to say insensitive, but cold towards actually victims. So we need to work on it. I think Brigadier and the colleagues, you know that this is one of the issues that we continuously raise about the welfare and in this regard, even the training of our staff. The issue of funding is a big issue, not only just the Department of Social Development. I think even the police will say the same about their resources and so on. So it's a general issue that we'd have to take forward to our finance committee. But I have this thing about, you know, Gauteng, we must get accustomed and we need to be ready for this issue that in everything that happens in our country, in Gauteng, it will be twice the amount. So the issue of that we are the most populated province. So all the services in Gauteng will be highly strained, and they will require more effort. And we know that if we are able to deal with all the issues or all the challenges in Gauteng, then the whole country will be okay, because that's where the majority of the people are here in Gauteng. So the funding issue is a big, big issue that we need to take up. The issue of alcohol and drugs, it's an issue that we have, as a committee, raised. We know that most of the perpetrators, there's an underlying factor of alcohol. And we just need to see how we continue to engage this discussion about the freely availability or unregulated access to alcohol. The issue of quality of service, you know, yes, indeed, in terms of compliance and structures, even though they are not that much, but we need to work on the issue, not around compliance, but also about the quality of service. So it talks to the availability of shelters, it talks about the availability of social workers, and we'll need to and the last point, you know, statutory rape is a surrogate indicator of abuse. Okay, they call it learner pregnancy, or the famous term is teenage pregnancy. But the number of young girls who are pregnant simply indicates that there is general abuse in our spaces, and health do see a whole lot of those patients and clients. And the reporting in terms of the Children's Act, I don't know if it's quite adequate. It's something that maybe we might have to look at on how we also stamp out that particular matter. So in summary, honorable members and colleagues, These are the issues, but I'm going to allow our respondents and our presenters in that order to make their concluding remarks based on, just to also influence and shape the way forward. You know, maybe one of the things that we would want to do as the committee, as part of highlighting this issue more, is to also have a house debate, a motion and a house debate on GBVF and also the outcomes of our FIS, so that we continuously highlight this matter at that level. So I will start with Brigadier, followed by the department, and then social development, and then the respondents in that order. Thank you. Brigadier.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Chairperson. There were various issues that were repeated along the way, but I think the Honourable Chairperson summed it up nicely at the end, bringing out the major factors, which will definitely be considered. But I would just like this specific sitting to understand, one of the points that I'd like to touch on now is the access to firearms. And although it will also be in those recommendations, the access to firearms remains a problem. You must remember, us as the South African Police Services, before we approve a firearm license, a person must be properly screened, he must be interviewed. Those around him, his family members, his next door neighbors, be it his employee, must be interviewed. That person is then also, he goes through a proper criminal check. So we're not giving firearms to criminals. That person might become a criminal afterwards, but then he must once again apply to have his firearm license approved once more, his competency approved. So after those 5 years, your handgun license is gone, you must reapply, you go through the exact same process. There must be interviews done. So from a compliance issue from the South African Police Services side, we do not give firearms to people that it does not belong to. You are also checked if you appear on the list of sexual offenders. And if you do, you won't get a license. So that is important for us to understand. When it comes to our members being involved as perpetrators, we are not the only law enforcement in the country. There are other people that also wear uniforms. And if you look at the statistics, they're the same. I like the way the House has finalized it and worked it out. It's a problem. You often understand violence by fighting violence with violence because of the environment that you find yourself in. And within the South African Police Services, we have sufficient people that can help our members. Social workers and whatever else it might be that is there, and it is utilized. But some members just don't utilize it. The most important part here is for that person to be exposed and to be dealt with. To be dealt with in such a way that we can stabilize him and put him down. You must remember one thing, that if you are working at Nedbank or you're working somewhere else out there and you commit an offense, domestic violence related, your firearm doesn't get taken away. If you're a police officer, the moment there's a charge or an allegation, your firearm is removed from you immediately. So then you are also subject to a Section 102 hearing. And if found unfit to possess or utilize a firearm, you must remember what impact it has on your career. So all of that stuff is in place and it is followed and there are statistics and it is done. So we have this compliance forum which is very, very successful. We must compliment the Provincial Secretariat on that. And we look at this. And we also want reports to come in from other law enforcement agencies as well to join this, and not only to be SAPS focused for non-compliance. The non-compliance doesn't mean it's only about when you didn't deal with the victim properly. It's also where we are perpetrators ourselves. It's also dealt with in that forum. And then all the scenarios are mitigated and answers are given, and we look at it and we then go out and we make sure that we practice what we found out during that. I think that is very, very important. And if we look at, I believe that another one that can be answered is what Honourable Sun asked, and I think it's important for us to understand that what would we like as a South African Police Services or law enforcement or DCS for the business community as well as for the public out there to do for us to ensure we find gender-based violence. And it's simple. It's not my problem, it's not your problem, it's our problem. And at the end of the day, if there is any donations that come in or that, it should be properly administered. It should be suitable for what it is going to be utilized for. Another very important point that came out in that way is we should have early warning systems in place. And there's nobody else but the community that can do that for us. Have that early warning system. As the Honourable Member said as well, she lives in a society where it's not hidden. It's not hidden away. I mean, we find out about these things. We know. The Honourable Member is a community leader. They'll come to the community leader and say, look at these 3 children. And then it goes to the police, and then from there it'll go to other different departments. But how many of those cases don't make it there? So we have to have a proper communication strategy from the streets, the blocks, to the sectors, to that police station, to the district, from the district to the province, so that we can understand what is happening and deal with it in such a way, and share that responsibility. However, the first responder remains the most important one in this chain. That first responder is that person, Honourable Kunene, that person that goes to that centre or speaks to that social worker. That social worker is an assistant to the first responder. That first responder that comes there and takes that case must take that case seriously and make sure all steps are followed. If within that area there isn't an available facility, we must look for an available facility. And we must make sure that those people are taken care of. If we turn a blind eye and just where the person says, yeah, go home and sort it out. No. We ourselves are committing an offense. When that person is a victim, it must be dealt with immediately. A GBV desk is not a room. A GBV desk is not a room. A GBV desk was designed after a lot of research was done. A GBV desk is where you come into a client service center and you see GBV desk, and you are a victim of gender-based violence. When you go there and that person deals with you, he doesn't interview you there. He takes you out of that queue where you are waiting, where there's maybe 40 or 60 people waiting, and you've been assaulted and you're crying, and he takes you there or she takes you there and then moves you to a victim-friendly room. So why should you wait in that queue for how long and then only reach a place where they say to you, you're going to go to the victim-friendly room? So the GBV desk procedure is as such. That's why they are in place. For you to cut the queue, to know you must go there. And where we are fortunate at police stations where we've got the GBV brigades and we've got the people that are doing the queue management, it helps you because it gets you there even quicker and it gets you through quicker. So you don't follow that stage where you could have secondary victimization. It's a very, very good principle, and it should be checked and run as such. I believe there are various reports, Honourable Chair, that will be dealt with through the recommendations as well. And I would just maybe then also ask Brigadier Zulu if she wants to comment on the investigation part of that, and if she's got anything to add that is also valuable for that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. From the reactive side, what I want to say is that I've taken note of all the presentations and the remarks or concerns that have been put. From the reaction side, I will say it is not easy to investigate these cases. We try our level best, but the most important thing is that alcohol is the most contributor to our cases not being positively or successfully prosecuted. And the other thing is withdrawal of cases by our victim through court, of which we don't have control over. There's a standing instruction within Gauteng that is given to our investigating officers. No cases of GBV must be withdrawn at the police station. So all the cases that are reported, if you want to withdraw, we send them to court, the court will take a decision on that. But mainly, alcohol is the key issue for us. I think that if maybe we can come up, I don't know with what, that can assist us, because we cannot tell our victims that they should not go and enjoy themselves, but at the end of the day, it becomes our challenge. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you, and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll deal with two matters and allow, with your indulgence, for colleagues to deal with the specifics. I think the first point is what Ms. Vetten raised and supported by Member San with respect to the quality of service. I think we take the point that the focus or emphasis should be on the qualitative side more than the quantitative side. But what we presented here was essentially a quantitative report that we were bringing to the committee. We also take the point with regards to the fitness of these VFRs, and I think Brigadier Joseph tried to deal with that aspect, as it were. So the last point that I want to deal with is the Ikaya Letemba issue. We've got two of these centers. One is in Everton and the other one is in Braamfontein. The biggest challenge that we've been having with these two centers, and this matter was raised previously in the portfolio committee. The biggest challenge that we face with these centers is in relation to OHS compliance, but also compliance in relation to certification by the municipality. And this largely relates to movement, for instance, with the Braamfontein Center specifically. We reported in the previous portfolio committee that we have to move, amongst others, the kitchen and the library from the upper floors to the ground floors for the center to meet the compliance requirements of the municipalities. For that to happen, we require DID's involvement. We have requested DID to come through and assist us with space planning for these two centers, and there is budget that has been appropriated for the current financial year, but we're just waiting for DID to appoint a professional service provider who will then assist us with the space planning. What they had indicated was that they will use their internal resources to try and cap the costs that are largely involved in these things. With regards to Everton, amongst other problems that we are encountering there is vandalism by the community around the center. Just over the last couple of weeks, there have been burglaries, and they've opened a huge, access point, if we call it that, through which they access the center and they vandalize the center. So that poses challenges in terms of our interventions with regards to the work, the OHS work that we have to do. But it's a matter that we are dealing with DID to try and fast track that infrastructure process so that we can then submit the final certifications or documentations with regards to compliance certificates that we need to get from the municipalities so that we can get that center up and running and compliant. There are ancillary issues related to the ownership of that facility, but that's a matter that we are handling with DID to ensure that we are able to receive the certifications on the side of the municipality that are required, but it's a matter that is receiving attention between us and DID, so that ultimately we can get the two centers compliant. I think I'll leave the Rabi Ridge comment or other question to the colleagues. I'm not sure if there's any other one that we need to respond to. Thanks.
Afternoon, Chair and members of the committee and other senior managers from various departments. That is an omission in the report on Rabi Ridge not be included in the recommendations, and we will rectify the report. Thank you.
Social development, last comments.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and also for all the inputs. They have been received with thanks, and also for the progressive way forward that you have already charted. With regards to the questions on shelters from Ms. Vetten, the comments around the shelters, the numbers that have gone down, there is quite a number of issues that led to the numbers to reduce from 21 to 13. Yes, there are some compliance issues, and also there are some of the NPOs that will mismanage funds and will suspend their funding because they are not complying with the provisions of the service level agreement. And there are some who were affected by applying late for the financial, year. As the department, we continuously engage with the municipalities through IGR and having bilaterals just to see how best we can, as work around the compliance, issues. So there is IGR that we continuously have with the municipalities, and MECs also assisting in unblocking some of the challenges. With regards to the implementation gaps that have been, mentioned by Ms. Fatima, we noting those, and I think what will assist Chair is that we should maybe, because there are some structures that are already existing, the forums that are already there, so these issues, if they can also be taken there so that we continue with discussions on how to improve, services to the victims of gender-based violence. The other issues around the social workers that have been raised, we are noting those issues. Honorable Evans, the director, today we brought even all the directors from the corridors to note all the issues. So if we can get all the issues for Johannesburg, the cases, that we have mentioned, the director here, we will make sure that they are attended to. I think the challenge is that our social workers, they are not working 24/7. So we're still looking at how best can we, because even for children in conflict with the law, the courts are expecting us to assess them. As and when they are arrested, a social worker is expected to assess them before they appear in court. And we're still having, the challenge is still something that we are working on as the department. But I think it will also maybe assist, if, more especially in the police stations, we will continue with the bilaterals with the Department of Community Safety to see how best can we improve on that service as well. Because what is happening now is we deploy social workers that are linked to the non-profit organizations that are deployed in the VFRs to provide psychosocial support services. So they are also not there 24/7. So it's something that we really have to go back to the drawing board, and look at it and try to ensure that the services are there 24/7. The issue of Ikale Temba, we're also working very closely with the Department of Community Safety because we are providing psychosocial services to this. And the one of Everton, it was also brought to our attention. So through our MEC, she was requesting that we should have a bilateral so that, it's either we take over the service completely as social development and provide all the services there. So there are discussions that will be currently unfolding. I think with regards to facilities also in the south, we have quite a number of facilities that we are funding in the south, including NPOs that we are funding. I think maybe what needs to happen is just to share all the databases of NPOs that we are funding, including our own facilities, the child and youth care centers that we have, in the south, to increase access to those facilities or to the services that are provided by those facilities. Lastly, on the issue of access to alcohol, yes, indeed, alcohol and drugs is one of the contributory factors to gender-based violence. We've got work stream meetings that are sitting on weekly basis led by our HOD, and in the last meeting the Department of Economic Development, specifically the Liquor Board, raised concerns about the infiltration of the outlets in communities, and we're recommending that perhaps we should look at putting a moratorium. The challenge that they have raised is that they have tried to put a moratorium, but they are being taken to the courts, to say you shall not deny me to operate and all that. So these are the issues that they're still grappling with, but the issue of access of drugs in communities and issues of access of alcohol in communities is just adding to all these social ills, that we are having. And when you look at the demand on the ground, because we've got so many social ills versus the number of social workers that we are having, I'm glad that Chairperson put this as an issue also, the issue of limited social workers that we are having, because there is just so much that needs to be worked with, so many, the capacity that we have as the department, including the NPO, we're not able to deal with all the social ills that are there on the, in our communities, and that are affecting our most vulnerable members of our communities. Thank you very much, Chair.
Lisa?
Thanks, and thank you for the opportunity to respond. I'm especially glad we've sort of opened up a bit more of a discussion around firearms, and I hope it can continue. I did actually do some research on this. The report was completed in December, and I'm happy to share it with the committee. And that indicated that 75% of the murders that occurred with a firearm was a licensed firearm. So it's entirely correct that responsible people have access to firearms. The concern is that not every firearm owner is necessarily responsible. So the fact that Brigadier Joseph says there are statistics saying how many people perhaps have been denied firearm licenses on the basis of domestic violence, and how many have subsequently had a firearm taken away from them as a result of finalized protection order, would, I think, really help enhance our understanding of what is happening. What would also be very useful, and if these are amongst the statistics you are keeping, because I think this will help us to refine and get to what the problem is when somebody is reporting a weapon in the use of a firearm in domestic violence, and the same as when they are murdered, that is a key time to ask, was the firearm licensed or was the firearm unlicensed? Because then I think we start to get to the point of where is it that we need to start filling these gaps. So if you have these data, and it's information that the Department of Community Safety can gather, I think that will be good. It will give us a much more holistic and comprehensive picture. And if we're talking about prevention, look at where do we target what it is that we need to do. Because it's probably going to need to focus on both licensed and unlicensed firearms, so that those who do have firearms are truly the responsible people. I think in relation to, and if you would like to look at that report and see some of the other data, I'm happy to share that with you. And I think it is also the question of, if you get a court order to remove a firearm, was it done? That, I think, is very important to keep track of. I think to go back to some of the Department of Social Development and Shelters, and I think it picks up this question of quality. And there are ways in which to test quality. So if Departments of Community Safety would like to have a further conversation about that, I'd be happy to arrange that, and I'm sure there are other people who could contribute usefully to that discussion as well. But I mean, I think in relation to shelters, the important thing that needs to be taken into account, and also goes to this question of quality, is what is the ethic or the ethos the Department of Social Development brings to services? Does the department see itself as an enforcer of rules, or does it see itself as a department that is there to facilitate and enable access to services that fulfill the rights to safety, security, psychological, and physical integrity? Because when you think you are an enforcer of rules, and you think it's more important that that a shelter should not get funding because they arrived 5 minutes late, you think that that's much more important than a right to safety and security, then I think we need to be asking what is the ethic and what is the ethos here? The same with municipal bylaw compliance, which is also affecting Ikaya Latemba. And a very important role that this committee might be able to make, I think, to break this deadlock, is to see if they could bring in, I'm not sure to what extent you can, but the ways you can to bring in local governments, infrastructure, to have this discussion around what is a developmental, useful approach to ensuring that we do not deny people access to services, that they get services. Clearly, those services must be safe. They should meet compliance. You know, you don't want to put people in buildings that are dangerous. That goes without saying. But, as the department has done, you can give people conditional registration that assists them to get to the point where they can comply. There are also provincial infrastructure grants that can be used to assist people towards compliance. So if this committee could work towards maybe brokering those kinds of discussions, because it does affect your own department, community safety, that could be a very important way forward, so that I think we get to an ethic and an ethos that is focused on service to people, not where enforcement is more important than access to rights to services, to safety and the like. End of my speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll just conclude with just some of these reflections and remarks, really drawing from the different presentations that we have received today. It's just 4 points, Chair. The first point is really around the fact that when we look at gender-based violence and to address it effectively, we must really look at gender-based violence and femicide as a microcosm of a much larger architecture of violence in our society and in our communities. And in addressing it, we really should be also addressing other forms of violence, because sometimes other forms of violence feed into gender-based violence, and addressing the key drivers, the root causes of other forms of violence, also inadvertently leads to addressing even the issue of gender-based violence. My second point is basically looking at violence, particularly at the fact that violence is not something that happens in isolation. It is caused, it has root causes, it is driven, therefore it has key drivers to it. It is fueled and triggers. There are triggers and fuelers to violence, particularly gender-based violence. So we really need to also invest a lot in addressing the key drivers, the root causes, the triggers and fuelers of gender-based violence in order to meaningfully address the scourge of gender-based violence in our province. My third point really is on the fact that community members are a great and often untapped resource when it comes to addressing gender-based violence in our communities. They are well able to organize, mobilize, co-create and design solutions to respond to and prevent gender-based violence in their localities. There must therefore be an investment in the interface between the police, the Department of Social Development and other government stakeholders and community members, and ensuring that we bring them on board as solution bearers to the problem of gender-based violence in communities. They are not only beneficiaries of the services, but they are co-creators of the very solutions that we seek to address gender-based violence. Lastly, partnerships with NGOs, community-based organizations, and civil society actors cannot be overemphasized, particularly when we are looking at addressing the scourge of gender-based violence in society and in our communities. Therefore, the criminal justice system, the Department of Social Development, and other government stakeholders should be complemented by the work of civil society organizations and CBOs, because we bring the lived experience of victims, and these matter particularly when it comes to ensuring that we address gender-based violence. They really should be the lived experiences and the realities of victims and community members in particular, as those affected by the very violence we seek to address, should be at the center and inform the very solutions that we seek to proffer to address the scourge of gender-based violence in society and in communities, particularly in our province. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fatima. Ms. Raik.
Thank you very much. I think it's a start in the right direction. I want to echo that, despite the fact that we come across as being very morbid and very kind of naysayers, and we come across as very critical. I think this is the beginning of a partnership, and I think it can be real. There's a lot to be said for resources. Yes, there isn't enough to go around, but I think that we need to look at realistically the expectation that society and organizations have and try to kind of find the middle ground for that. I'm heartened by the fact that this committee has listened with such detail to what we have to say. I think that if we are to be honest and real, that the partnerships between government and NGO has to be, we have to level the playing fields. I also think the expectation of what social workers can and can't do needs to be addressed. Social work is a very valuable profession, but the status that is given to the profession is very low. Just for your information, and that social workers start seeing clients from their second year of being a student, and yet people would prefer to go and pay a psychologist who only start seeing clients after they've finished their first year of their master's degree. Social workers offer casework, group work, and community work, whereas psychologists only do casework, and at some instances they will do family therapy. Social workers are also people that are advocates for greater community change. So this is an important profession, and I think a lot more investment needs to go into looking at what social workers can and can't do. But also social workers are very limited in what they can offer. They can offer counseling, but a lot of the needs of the community is bread and butter issues. People need to eat, people need safety, they need security, and when there aren't enough shelters, there isn't enough food parcels to go around, when their hands are tied when it comes to issues around removal of children, finding a shelter for the night, it's very disempowering to a social worker that they can't make that difference, and sometimes it comes across as social workers are not interested or that they don't care. So I think we need to kind of find the balance there. I think this is a key role for the Department of Social Development to advocate for this profession, because I teach at UJ as a contract lecturer, and people don't want to do social work. This is a second or third choice. And when you look at the number of social workers actually leaving this country, it's shocking. At least 5 social workers every week make application to a university to find work abroad, because the way in which social work is portrayed, but also the work conditions are not conducive. Social workers also earn sometimes less than what a PA earns. So people leave. So I think there's a need for a greater interrogation of the problem. And it's not one particular sector of the community. It is all our problems. It's all our individual responsibility, but it's all government departments as well. So I think that while this is the beginning, I hope it's not the end of having to address these critical matters. There's no excuse for us not wanting to do more, to be better, but it can't be a quick fix solution, and that's kind of the message I want to leave you with.
Thank you. Last bite.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be very brief. I think echoing the sentiments of the colleagues to say alcohol is the biggest contributor to not only GVB, but the last time I checked, I think we're the third country in the world that people on the road are killed because of alcohol. So clearly there's something should be done on a legislation or policy level. And I understand it's a catch-2020 situation to say we are a democratic state. We can't denote to people how they should drink. But unfortunately, perhaps we have to and set mandates so that we can somehow find ways because definitely alcohol can continue to kill people and particularly within the domestic violence sector. Continuing with that, and I'll still go back to staff and training to embody holistic development of the staff, not overlooking the personal development because generally even people as the state want to prioritize money making and capacity building on the core work. That is okay, but at the expense of personal development. Hence I'm saying we cannot afford for policy like SAPS members, rather the police, and certain sectors not to have coaching session, particularly on a personal level or on a human level, because these are key people within the country. So definitely social research and organizational research, it's really critical, especially in the key departments or people who are working with crime and crime prevention on this level. And what else? Intersectoral collaboration or interdepartmental collaborations. I think the ISDM model is good, but it does not set a clear direction or on the who is supposed to really ensure intersectoral collaborations on the ground. So maybe with that, a lot of work needs to go into that to say when I'm working in the Department of Social Development in the West End, who am I or who's supposed to carry on this mandate of ensuring that municipality, the department, on all these key role players meet on a regular basis. So that also perhaps needs to be factored in. And lastly, I think I'll go back, I think I forgot to mention structure, organizational culture is strategy for lunch. That definitely, we need to look at organizational structures within all the key departments to say what can be done on that level, because strategy definitely does not always fall short of culture. So most of the work needs to also go to organizational culture. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to allow the two last comments. I think it's my fault and mistake that I didn't give them the opportunity before the closing remarks. But I would give them the opportunity to say something since they are here. The gender and gun-free SA. You will decide who starts at the back there. Last comments. We are going to be closing very soon in the next 5 minutes. I think we are almost at the tail end.
Thank you very much, Chair. My comments are simple to say thank you so much for this particular meeting, and from where I'm seated, I'm glad that the firearms and their role in domestic violence have been discussed largely through the presentation that Lisa did and the honorable members, and the brigadier also answered that. I think Gauteng can lead in putting some indicators in the police reports to say when a firearm was collected, was it legal or illegal, or other indicators that will really differentiate and ensure that we are all at the same page in ensuring that the issue of firearms is dealt with in two parts. First of all, the illegal ones must be recovered, I agree, but the legal ones must also be controlled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity. The Commission rather had questions to ask, but was advised that their questions should be sent in written form, as maybe the respondents would not be, would have the opportunity to respond. The only comment that we have is that from the reports we've seen, it's that it shows a it shows a positive picture in terms of compliance, formal compliance, like Ms. Lisa indicated. However, through the our services that we render in terms of oversight roles and monitoring, it seems like the reality does not necessarily meet the picture that is painted in terms of formal compliance. So in respect of the questions that we will be sending, it would rather be around what compliance measures are implemented based on the complaints that we also handle when it comes to the investigations of GBV matters. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm certain that it's not our last engagement today. I think since the issue of compliance to Domestic Violence Act also speaks to us pushing back the scourge of GBVF, it will require us to have more further engagements and also follow up on some of the things that we would have actually suggested today in terms of infrastructure, human resource, police, social workers, the training of police, the issue of funding itself. We are going to a budget cycle, our own as government, the whole government. So our input as legislatures will be quite important in impressing on issues relating to finance and issues that we are talking about. And since GBVF has been declared a national disaster, there's certainly a big budget that is set aside to deal with this matter. It's something that we need to see how we influence the budgeting cycle, particularly in terms of the funding of the NPOs and also the employment of social workers, more social workers on the ground in police stations and in actually hospitals. The issue of business, Member San, I think we take it. It will help that we see how we encourage them in Gauteng to actually contribute to this, but I think it will require us to have more programs from the side of the committee that business will come in, but also to link up with NGOs where we can be able to point them out where they can be able to help with funding. But business must play a role in this regard. The issue of the triggers, for GBVF and domestic violence, alcohol, I think is one matter. We'll continue focusing on it. Our last engagement, we had agreed that we are going to engage the retailers, is it owners? What do you call them? Remember the name? The traders, in the liquor traders, because their trade and their bread and butter is causing us a lot of actually headaches, and it requires some form of actually balance. The issue of quality has been raised. I think please share the document and the work that has been done, and we will see how we factor it in when we receive reports from the Department of Community Safety. The Kayali Tembu matters are quite disturbing. We need to see and make sure that they're all functional. And the issue of actually firearms. The early warning systems, Brigadier, they are quite important, but they only function when we have a proper organized community. And we need to, in a real sense, HOD, to enter that space and make sure that community policing, as it were, becomes, if we sort it out properly, it can resolve most of our challenges in townships and in informal settlements, and it will act up and it will make sure that we do have more resources and put in that space to make sure that we deal with these issues. So with that, colleagues and honorable members, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here and taking part in this important discussion. It's not the first and it's not the last. We are going to make sure that maybe the whole legislature does engage in terms of a debate on these issues. They are not the same, but we need to raise the shine the spotlight on this matter and of the work that we have done over the past year and a half. And thank you. I had, somebody has donated sunglasses. If you have changed your mind in terms of donating, please come see me. They are here. And then I hope that, Brigadier, these cars are not backlight, but their windows were quite open, were left open. It's a silver gray Mercedes JZ55XRGP. The windows were opened. White Polo TSI, also MS12TKGP, the windows are open. I'm told that there is, are you serving lunch? Okay, I'm told there's lunch. Please make sure that you pass there. The lunch is served at the restaurant. Please pass there and grab something to eat, so that as a committee we are also not accused of wasteful expenditure. But thank you so much for the great conversation and for your attendance. Thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned.